And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. Guess what? It's Monday, and we are back for our normal, regularly scheduled programming. I am Vince D'Addario. I am the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime. That is Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com, and we are – you always got to throw a sly one at me. We are ready to get things fired up. This is our last week before fall camp opens. So we've got a lot planned for this week, and then obviously a lot planned moving into next week and beyond. It's going to be fun. And we will have, I don't know if I'm, breaking protocol here or not, Brian, but we do have a show scheduled on Saturday.
Yeah.
Following practice. So we want to bring you guys, whatever after practice.
Wasn't gonna be a surprise. So I'm okay with you telling everybody.
Okay, fair enough. So we're going to have a live show following practice. That'll be in the 11 to 11:30 area, depending on where we can find some Wi-Fi and get hooked up and get ready to rock and roll. But we have access to the first 30 minutes of practice. And so we will bring my thoughts and things of that nature after practice.
And there's a chance this could be the first week all year that we have a show every single day. May just have a recruiting show on Sunday.
So, that's a good point. I forgot about that. Yeah, this could be a seven day a weeker, possibly.
Yeah,
possibly.
I have a lot of content this week, that's for sure. And we're going to mix up this week. We're going to mix up sort of some team topics as we kind of get ready for the season. 5 things we're most confident in today is going to be our topic, right? Today, we're going to go over the 5 personnel things that we're most confident in today. And then for like a little bonus nugget, we're going to talk about sort of the 3 bigger picture things we're most confident in.
Right.
Then tomorrow we'll do our Toledo and Purdue podcast, which means some news is going to break between now and then.
That's absolutely right.
That's going to cause us to not do that because apparently the football gods do not want us talking about Toledo and Purdue. Wednesday we'll kind of talk about the 5 biggest concerns we have about this football team, and the from a personnel standpoint, and then the 3 areas where we have the biggest question marks, from a bigger picture standpoint. Right. Thursday we'll get back into. We're going to talk Cincinnati, Wisconsin, probably a little Virginia Tech on Thursdays. We're going to put some of these team previews in a little bit more condensed format, and then Friday will be Vince's favorite day of the week. So Friday mailbag. So that is our schedule for today, Vince. But let's get going on this topic about. And as always, we're gonna talk. We're gonna kind of cover things. If you have something you want to interject during the show, send us a super chat. Otherwise, we'll get to all your questions at the end of the show. But Vince, I want to talk about the 5 aspects of this team, and we're gonna have bold predictions, and we're gonna get into like season expectations. But that'll be closer to the actual kickoff, right?
Right.
Right now, it's more about looking at where this team is heading into fall camp. And there are 5 areas, and we had I told you to give me 5. You gave me 6, which kind of says about how confident Vince is in the football team and heading into the season. But the 5 areas personnel wise, where as you look at it, you say, "Boy, I'll be real surprised if that area is not at least pretty good."
Maybe one of the strengths,
great, but it's at least pretty good. A strength of the team. We're confident this part is going to be good.
Right.
There's always going to be areas that end up being better than we think. I don't know if anyone predicted that the running back production would be what it was last year, right? With all the injuries.
Especially going in, too. Yeah.
Right. This time, I'm referring to like this time of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although at this time of the year, I don't even know if we were sure we're going to have a football season. But
that's fair.
When we did realize we're going to have it, I don't know if I would have said, "Hey, running back is going to be really good. There's going to be an All-American at running back." And you're like, yeah, freshman All-American. Yeah, Chris Terry. Yeah, it makes total sense. No. And so there's always going to be some surprises. But what do we think right now of what we know are going to be the strengths? And the first one, Vince, was the biggest no-brainer ever.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that is that we believe Kyle Hamilton is going to be an All-American this season. Hot take, right? Real hot take. Woo! It takes professionals. Only professionals like us can come up with that kind of nuanced take on Notre Dame, but that we think Kyle Hamilton is going to be really, really good this year.
Well, and we've talked about ways in which he can be really, really good this year, and part of that is the play of his safety running mate in Houston Griffith, and part of that is just on him. And he's going to be moved from the boundary side to the field side for the majority of the time, right? I mean, he's going to be moved all around. If Marcus Freeman is the defensive coordinator that we think he is, look, Kyle Hamilton's going to be all over the field, right? So I just feel like he's going to take his game to yet another level. He's going to, be a blitzer. He is going to be a center fielder. He is going to be a leader in that secondary, which frankly needs a leader this year, right? I mean, other than Kyle Hamilton, an established returner is there, right? I mean, you've got Clarence Lewis who started some games. You've got Tariq Bracy who started some games. You've got Houston Griffith who has playing time, but and then you go all the way over to Hart, who is going to be a new starter. So I believe that they need a leader, and I think he's going to bring that as well as his production on the field. So I think this is going to be a big year for Kyle Hamilton. And again, not overly shocking that he is the first one that we have the most confidence in. And we're not necessarily, I don't know if you are or I am, going in order of our confidence, but he would still be at the top of my list.
Well, it's going in it's not necessarily going in order of most confident after this.
Fair enough.
But he was number one because it's the thing I'm most confident in.
Yes.
And he was number one on your list too that you sent to me.
Yep.
And look, I don't know if we've talked a lot about, pardon me. We've talked a lot about how the lack of experience in other places could affect Kyle Hamilton. We've discussed that before.
Sure.
What we haven't spent enough time on, Vince, is how Kyle Hamilton, being the great player he is, can then benefit those other positions.
Absolutely.
So if you're Marcus Freeman, you're going to get a pretty early tell in games, but then throughout the season, okay, here's what teams are doing to avoid Kyle Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can then use Kyle Hamilton to your advantage. Okay, well, look, this team likes to play to the boundary. They also don't want to run at Kyle Hamilton. So this week we may play Kyle Hamilton to the boundary. So we recall your field boundary discussion from a couple weeks ago on the Football 101. We talked about how I believe, based on my sources, that Kyle Hamilton's going to start the season as the field safety. Well, if you're playing a team that wants to do a lot of stuff into the boundary, a lot of run game, a lot of pass game into the boundary, the easy thing for Marcus Freeman is, okay, we're going to put Kyle Hamilton there. And say you can either you can keep attacking our best player and the guy that's better than anyone you have, or you can go to the field more, which is where you're not necessarily comfortable.
Right.
And then he can do things, obviously, maybe slide people over, put more numbers over there because you have Kyle to the boundary, then you can put more numbers to the field. So there's all types of different things that Marcus Freeman can do with a player like Kyle Hamilton that then makes the guys around him better. And we haven't talked a lot about that. And that is one of the advantages of having a guy like Kyle Hamilton because, he's a great player. Okay, well, what makes him a great player? Number one, he can play sideline to sideline. I mean, he can if he's on the hash, you have no chance of throwing deep. In center of the field, he can play go routes on either outside. I mean, he's just got incredible range. He can play man coverage on tight ends. He can play man coverage on slots. He can play man coverage on backs. He can come down and play the run from depth, meaning he's lined up deep. He can fly downhill, play the alleys, do things like that. And then he can come up close to the box and make plays in the run game there. So when you look at Kyle Hamilton and you look at what he can do, he can impact the game so many ways. He was a blitzer, an effective blitzer last year. Mm-hmm. So I think those are things you look at and say he can impact the game in a ton of ways. And then how you use him can then protect maybe some areas where, hey, this team likes to do this offensively. That's not really our strong suit. So this week we're going to adjust and have Kyle do this to protect that area. And having a guy like that, I see him having sort of an eraser role on defense. Eraser meaning he can erase some of your mistakes. I see him having a bit of an eraser role, similar to what Jalen Smith had for Notre Dame in 2015.
One of the areas that I think that I'm really looking forward to seeing him step up is his play recognition. I feel like his time on the sideline during the spring will only benefit him from a play recognition standpoint because he was able to see so much on the sideline, and that's where you really work those mental reps, right? And from what we were hearing from spring practice, he spent a lot of time, with Marcus Freeman, spent a lot of time with Chris O'Leary. So it was an opportunity for him to really get a lot of mental reps. And I really do believe, and even if he did play in the spring, I still think this is an area where he would have taken another step, right? It is from the play recognition, the mental side of things. where everything just kind of slows down for him. And I'm not saying that it was super fast for him before, because he was a great player.
He was a sophomore. He's an incredibly smart player, but he was still a sophomore. I mean, you can only be but so smart as a sophomore because you've only seen things really so many times. Now, to your point, Vince, he's now a junior. He's been in the system for 2 years. One is a very important part of the rotation. The next year as a starter and a producer. And now as sort of a leader. And to your point, I think he would have gained a lot of experience and knowledge from that. But I really, truly believe that him sitting out this spring was good for him. Number one, that ankle got time to heal, which is really important. And then the other piece of that is obviously being able to see the game differently. Look, you know it, I know it. Anyone that's ever gone from playing to coaching knows when you go to a coach, like you just see the game differently. Just because the angles of where you're standing, like as a quarterback, I could see certain things, but then when I'm 10 feet behind the quarterback, I can see even more. Like, I see that guy. I see that kind of thing.
Well, and when you see the whole picture, like it may, like for me, when I started coaching, seeing the entire picture and understanding the entire picture, whether it was offensively or defensively and how kind of everything worked together, that helped me understand the game so much more. Because when I was a player, I knew my job. Like I knew my job. I knew what I had to do, because I was like a wide receiver on offense, for example. And I knew, okay, when it's a pass play, I knew what I got to do. When it was a run game, I don't know what the heck they're doing over there, but I know if it's coming my way, what kind of block I have to throw. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like, it made more sense to me as a coach to see the whole picture. And that's kind of what you're talking about with Kyle Hamilton. I'm not saying he wasn't seeing the whole picture from a safety spot, but he's more worried about what he needs to do. Right. And now he's able to see kind of a bigger picture and how that affects him and how he can affect others.
Because you mentioned, Vince, you were a receiver, so you only saw a certain part. Well, when I played defense in high school, it was as a corner, so it was a similar mindset. But I also played quarterback, and as a quarterback, I had to know what everybody else is doing.
Right.
That's kind of where Kyle Hamilton is as a player. He does actually have to know what everybody else is doing as a safety. He has to know what my run fit is here. He has to know, hey, I'm doing this because the corner's doing this. And I think being able to take a step back and see how it all kind of works together, I think it's going to benefit him.
Yeah, no question.
And then also it benefits the depth. So Kyle Hamilton for me, Vince, is clearly the thing that I'm most certain of. And of course, there's always sort of the caveats, and I don't really want to do this on every single one. Okay, assuming he's healthy. Obviously, this is always assuming that guys are healthy and those type of things, but just because you can't dictate, like I predict that so-and-so is going to get hurt in the game 5, right? Like
can't predict that. That's not possible. Yeah, right.
Assuming good health, this is what we see. And look, Kyle Hamilton proved he can be an All-American on a bum ankle, right? So now he's healthy. If he's able to stay healthy, what's he going to be able to do? So it's exciting. And, there was another mock draft that came out from the NFL Draft Network and had him go number 4, which just for context, there's been like two safeties drafted in the top 5 since 1991, I believe. That's it.
Since 91.
Since 91. I believe that's it. So that just kind of tells you just how highly thought of Kyle Hamilton is.
Yeah, how special he is. Yeah. Enjoy it for a year, everybody.
So certainly confident that Kyle Hamilton, I guess you could say that's another thing. I'm pretty confident that this is going to be, barring injury, this is going to be Kyle Hamilton's last season at Notre Dame. So enjoy these next 13 to 14 games of Kyle Hamilton playing safety for Notre Dame. Vince, our number 2 area, and this is now where we're going to kind of go offense, defense, right? So it's not necessarily order of importance. We kind of just go in areas where we're confident, and we talked a little bit of defense, and now let's go offense.
Yeah, we
didn't necessarily agree on the top one. I went with running backs, and you had them on your group, but just not as high. But I'm going with running backs, and Vince, I'll start off, and then I want to hear your thoughts on it because you had it 5th on your list. So I was like, wow, okay, I expect a little bit higher. But when I look at running back, I see a group that, to me, returns as top 2 guys from last year. I don't see either one of them taking a step back. If they're both just as good as they were last year, then I think they're going to equal their production, if not surpass it, because of some of the schematic changes we are hoping to see this season. And some of the schematic changes we actually did see in the spring. So I think it'll be some improvement there. But again, just from an experiential standpoint, if they don't get announced stronger, announced faster, improve their technique at all, just the experience is going to result in, moderate, production jumps. And this was a very productive group last year. I think the reason I'm even more confident in this group now than I would have, been last year if I'd have known what Chris Tyree and Kyron Williams were going to do. If we predicted it, we knew it. Kyron's going to run for 1,100 yards, be a second-team All-American. He's going to rush for 10-plus touchdowns. Tyree's going to do this. I would still say I'm more confident in the running back depth chart now because of the presence of the incoming freshman, along with Sebo. Sebo establishes himself as a solid part of the rotation last year. Good short yardage goal line guy. And then you've got the incoming freshmen who are, to me, very talented players and bigger guys. So guys that are more physically ready to play day one, to the point where part of my confidence comes from is if they lose a player from the 1-2, I still feel this group is going to be really good. I think Chris Tyree could step into the starting lineup if Kyron Williams went down, and then everybody bumps up a bit, and I'm confident that the freshman could step into the lineup and perform at a high level. If Chris Tyree goes down, you actually lose a little bit more if Tyree goes down than you would Kyron from the standpoint of not necessarily the better player, but the standpoint of you're losing a skill set you can't replicate. So like if Kyron goes down, there's other guys that can do what Kyron does, just not as well as Kyron does it, right? If Chris Tyree goes down, you don't have anyone that can go run a 4.3 and be a 90-yard. So you'd lose a little bit there, but you don't necessarily need that to have a great backfield. And that's kind of where I look at it, Vince, is the confidence. That part of the thing that gives me confidence in a specific group is, do you have the ability to sustain an injury or someone not playing up to the potential? At some positions, they can't sustain that at all. At running back, I feel like that because injuries happen, right? It's part of the game. This is a position group where, barring them losing like 3 guys, this is a group that I expect to be really, really good this season.
Well, for me, and you're right, I did have them number 5 on my list, but when I was making out the list, I was just kind of going through the team and, writing down people that, groups that I was, confident in. And then, it's like, oh yeah, running backs, got to get them down here. You know what I mean? And I can't wait till we get to our next one because I actually wrote them down 6th, which was ridiculous. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot this group. And I wrote them down and they ended up being the 6th slot. So I'm sure you're going to give me some crap for that. But the running back group, I'm very confident in the running back group based on what they did last year. Right. And for me, it's a trying to figure out the wording for it, but it makes me feel better. And when I get confident about a group, it's about, okay, what are they returning, right? What kind of production did they have? What kind of experience did they have? The running back group checks all of those boxes. And then you add in Sebo and you add in the 2 freshmen, and it makes it a home run for me. And so it made it really, clearly the running back group I'm confident in. And right, this time last year, no confidence in the running back group because we didn't know. There was just too many question marks. They would have been on our Wednesday show, like the running backs last year. And
yeah,
this year
being the biggest
right,
concerns.
Just concerns like, well, man, I don't know what we're going to get from the running back room because there was so much inexperience coming in. You had a true freshman, you had a redshirt freshman who had basically 0, reps after game 1 or 2 or whatever when he fumbled, and it was like no more. And so we didn't really know what we were going to get from them. Now, the experience, the production, and then you add in the fact that we believe that the offense is going to be making the proper changes. I just think that elevates this running back room even more.
Yeah,
because I think that they're going to be such an integral part in what Notre Dame does, both on the ground and in the air. It makes my confidence level that much higher.
That right there is a great point, Vince. Last year, they did not build around the running backs. They built around the offensive line.
Correct. And the running backs benefited, but it wasn't
like – and here's what that means, right? So you weren't saying, okay, we've got to take Kyron Williams' skill set and we got to figure out where we can incorporate it in every aspect of the offense. That wasn't the conversation because at this time a year ago, they were hopeful that Kyron would make a jump. He had a good spring. He had a good the spring the year before, but didn't play much in the fall. There was no spring this time to see what growth he would make. It was kind of like, well, we think he could be good, but we don't know. And then, of course, he breaks out. So, but when you have that uncertainty, what you're not going to do is build your offense around that uncertainty. Now he's a certainty. So it's even more so like, okay, how do we make him at the center of the offense? Because the offensive line is going to be the center of the offense. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're using all of Kyren Williams' skill sets to their advantage, right? I actually think the staff did a pretty good job of adjusting on the fly to then utilize Kyren in some of the ways that they could utilize him. And it took them a little, kind of the middle of the year because Kyren still had to prove himself.
Absolutely.
I don't think they went into the Duke game saying Kyren's going to have 200 yards of offense in his first game in a Notre Dame uniform. You never go into that. You hopeful, but you never say it's going to happen. And and then he steps up and played well and had a couple okay games, or okay game against South Florida. He didn't play a ton because they blew him out so quickly. And then, does really well against Florida State. And that came after a pause, right, for COVID. So you weren't practicing and continuing to build around those things. So it was a really strange year. So I actually give the staff a lot of credit that by the time we got to the middle of the year, you started seeing those guys being used more effectively, even on little things like, you think of the way that he was used against Boston College, lining up in the slot, doing some ISOs. I think we're going to see more of that stuff now because as you look at later in the year, how Kyren was used is a lot different than how he was used earlier in the year, in my opinion. You think of the Georgia Tech game, Vince, where they line up Kyren in the backfield. They got Chris Tyree out in the slot to the right. They run an off-tackle play. Georgia Tech doesn't respect the fake reverse, to Chris Tyree. So Tommy Rees does what I felt was a savvy move by a young guy, which is run the same flipping play and do the reverse this time. Because, normally coaches, got that in my back pocket, going to go to that one later. No, he said.
And they never do. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we're not going to give you time to adjust. We're not going to give you time to say, hey, get to the sideline. Hey, look, if they do that smoke motion again, you got backside safety, you got to be prepared for that. And then now they're ready for it. He went right back to the next play. Chris Tyree catches it, runs for 20, gets the reverse and runs for 20-some yards. Like, you're going to see more of that stuff that we didn't really see as much of last year because of inexperience, different type of offense, because more of a 2, 12, 13 personnel, that kind of stuff. Sure. And then, of course, running backs that you didn't enter fall camp thinking for. So now Tommy Rees and Lance Taylor and John McNulty and Jeff Quinn, again, I'm naming those 4 guys because they're the most ones involved in the run game. I'm not purposely leaving out the receivers coach. It's just he's not really sitting down saying, hey, here's what I think we need to do in the run game. Those 4 guys, to me, now have since from January to now have had the time to say, how do we build our offense around these guys, these 2 guys? And that's why, to me, there's a great deal of confidence in what this group is going to be.
Yeah, this group is going to be electric. That's all. Sorry, I just want to throw that part in there. I agree. They're going to be electric, not just confident, but electric. So
I agree.
I'm excited.
I agree. Both of them. I think both of them. I think we're going to see more big plays from Kyren Williams this year than we did. Again, as good as Kyren was, I want to point out his 5.3 yards per carry was the lowest by a starting running back at a leading rusher at Notre Dame since 2014. Significantly so, like by a lot. And a big part of that was because of the type of offense they played, because everything was so condensed. We showed that a couple weeks ago in a Football 101, because everything was so condensed. It was a lot. Wasn't as much room to work. If they make the changes that we anticipate they're going to make and hope that they're going to make, I think that's going to result in more room for him to work too. And then I think the pass game is really where you're going to see him get more in space and maybe have some bigger play opportunities. Before we move on to the next part, Vince, I do want to thank Han Solo for a super chat. Han, I appreciate that very, very much. Very much. So very, very much appreciate that. Next, Vince, let's go back to the defense. We could have easily, if we're going to talk about a position group, right? So just take away the best player on the team, right? If we're going to talk about the position group, then to me, the defensive line would be my number 1 position group that I'm most confident in coming into the season. And I look at it, and we have some really good questions about the defensive line that we'll get to after the podcast portion. So, hang around for the Q&A. If you're listening to this via podcast, the Q&A will come out later. Make sure you check that out, because I can already see there's some really good questions about these, and especially the defensive line. And then there's some really good ones about the running back too. But about the defensive line, this group is – I was talking with someone the other day that isn't super familiar with Notre Dame, and I said, it's kind of funny. There's guys right now at Notre Dame, Aiden Kanaana, Gabriel Rubio, Nana Osafa-Mensah, that are struggling and battling just to get on the second team. That 4 years ago, the first year of this turnaround, would have played a ton of football.
Mm-hmm.
A ton of football.
Yeah.
And would have had to play a ton of football because there wasn't anybody there, but they would also have been good enough. I would argue that Aiden Keanaaina would have been better as a freshman than Kurt Hines was as a freshman. Kurt played a ton more because who else going to play?
Kurt had to play more.
Elijah Taylor, Brandon Tiassum. It wasn't going to happen, right? Kurt Hines was just better than those guys the day stepped foot on campus. Well, what do you think Gabriel Rubio would have done back then, snaps wise? And so it's just amazing how quickly that unit has just become where 2 years in a row, Notre Dame has lost 2 starting defensive ends to the National Football League, meaning they were drafted. 2 years in a row.
Correct.
And I'm looking at the defensive ends like, I'm going to be all right. I'll be fine. So, I mean, then you look inside and you're like, well, why are the ends going to be okay? Well, you moved Myron Tungvalo out there. He's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but didn't he start a defensive tackle? Yeah, but that's all right. They got Jason Adamiolo there. Well, okay, well, what about if he gets hurt? Well, that's fine. I got Jacob Lacey and Riley Mills and Gabriel Rubio and Howard Carter. It's just the depth of this group is really impressive. And I thought this group, for the most part, finished the season on a really strong note. If you go back and watch the Alabama game, Notre Dame was outmatched in some areas against the Alabama offense. The linebackers didn't play well that game. The inside linebackers. The corners didn't play well that game. There's one group that played really well that game, in my opinion. It's the defensive line. They more than held their own, and that's an encouraging thing to me because all the inside guys are back.
Mm-hmm.
They lost a couple outside guys. Dalen Hayes got hurt early in that game. Didn't play like 15 snaps that game. Nadia Ogundishi's gone, but other than that, everybody's back. I have a great deal of confidence in this group. And I also think, too, the other part of my confidence is because this is a system by Marcus Freeman that is geared towards building around them more so, whereas Coach Lee, again, not better, not worse, just different type of defense. It worked incredibly well the other way. But just looking at the defensive line and the specific skill set of these players, I think the Coach Freeman's defense is going to be geared more towards allowing them to go make more plays. And that's another reason I'm pretty confident in this group, Vince.
Well, you covered a lot of it as to why I'm confident in this group as well, and I could use the same argument.
That's why I make the big bucks, Vince. Kidding, obviously.
Well, I could use the same argument that I use for running backs, right? It's returning production versus depth and including depth, right? And that's the defensive line. I mean, and depth is probably the number one reason. But you've got returning starters coming back because you're moving MTA outside, so he's technically a returning starter. And then Jason is he's not a returning starter, like quote unquote, right? But Jason Adamiola is a guy who got a lot of reps, right, when he wasn't injured, and so I expect big things from him as well. And I used the word electric when we were talking about the running backs. I feel like this group can be electric as well when you talk about the physical attributes of Isaiah Foskey, what he brings to the table. And I think MTA is better suited right now as a big end in this defense. Mm-hmm. And then you add in, we talked about the offensive philosophy change for the running backs and how it's going to benefit them, but the defensive philosophy change for the defensive line and how that's going to benefit those guys. They're taking a strength of this defense and they're making it better, which I don't know that I thought could happen, to be honest with you, but you're going to see it in production, in the numbers, in the tackles for loss, in the hurries. All of that I think is going to escalate. It's going to make this team better. I don't know that they're going to be better necessarily from a points per game, when it's all said and done, because that's how they generally rank defenses, right? It's a points per game kind of situation. But I think some of those electric numbers, some of those pass rush numbers, some of those tackle for loss numbers, I feel like those are going to get better. And that's what excites me about this defensive line. They're going to be making plays on their own, as opposed to you and I know they're making plays, but it's getting cleaned up by other people, if that makes sense. Like, yeah. I'm expecting these guys to make plays on their own, and that's going to be the fun part of this group.
Yeah, and it's going to be needed, in my opinion. I think that takes a lot of the pressure off of the linebackers. I think we talk a lot about the linebackers and what their roles are going to be, and will they improve, and will they do this, and will they do that. And for me, Vince, when I look at that group, I see a bunch of guys that they were playing in a system where a lot was expected of them. And there's there's still obviously a lot expected of them now. There's always a lot expected linebackers, but it's not going to be as like I've said in the past. Marcus Freeman calls it a defensive line driven defense, and I get where he's coming from. I've kind of called it more of a linebacker driven offense or defense. I mean, from the standpoint of I think that this group is going to be able to produce at such a higher level. They're going to be taking on some of the responsibilities that the safeties had, and a part of that is because of what you're asking the defensive line to do.
Right.
And this group can now just kind of, as linebackers, can now just kind of go run to the ball, just go attack, because the defense is sort of the first wave of attack, where in the past, the defense was kind of used to set up the linebackers to then go make a lot of plays. Everything was kind of funneled to the linebackers. Now It's just about the defensive line is going to go make plays. And a lot of times when you're doing that, Vince, you're more of a spill team. And what a spill team is, you're disrupting things. You're forcing bounces. You're forcing the team to kind of stretch. And that plays right into what I think the strengths of this linebacking core is going to be, which is these cats can run.
Yeah, it's the sideline to sideline.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about Bo Bauer being the most unathletic dude that you have in your two deep, that you're okay. You're pretty good there athletically, right?
Well, anybody that's watched him run down on special teams knows that Bo Bauer's an athlete. I mean, he beats guys down the field.
But would you argue
tackles.
who would you say so we go two deep. So we're going to go Jack Kaiser, Drew White, Shane Simon, Maris Luafau, Bo Bauer, and let's go Isaiah Pryor, right? Of that six.
Yeah, he's probably the most quote unquote unathletic guy.
Let's just say let's say if we're going to rank them by athleticism 1 to 6, so that we look at it from a more positive standpoint.
Yeah,
I put Bo Bauer 6, right?
Yeah.
Well, the point being, if these linebackers are being allowed to chase sideline to sideline because you're forcing bounces a lot, or you're forcing early cutbacks, that plays right into their hands because then they can just run to the ball. But that all starts up front, and it's with the defensive line, and that's where my excitement comes, because I do think we're going to see a lot of that. And the good news is early in the season, I don't think this group is going to play a lot of good offensive lines.
That's true.
And so we're going to find out early on if our optimism about this unit is justified, because they're certainly going to get a chance to to make a lot of plays this year. No question about it. Next, Vince, let's talk about some wide receivers. I think this is a group that's probably going to surprise a lot of people. You actually had them second.
I did. Believe. They were the second group to come to mind for me. Yeah.
They were also on my list. So I'm going to let you kick it off, Vince, because I think this is one. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised that's listening, unless this is your first show and you've never watched Notre Dame play. You're probably not surprised that Kyle Hamilton's on our list. You're not surprised that the running backs are on our list. If you listened to the show before, you're not surprised the defensive line's on this list. I think there are some people that would they may not be surprised because they know how high we are, but they would probably disagree with us. So just start breaking down, Vince, why are you so confident in this receiving? And I am too. I'm just setting you up for your answer.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Why are you so confident that this receiving core is going to be one of the strengths of this football team?
Well, I will start with the fact that none of my arguments for my strength of the other position groups really apply here, right? It's not returning production per se outside of a couple of guys. It's not, returning starts necessarily. That doesn't really exist. What does exist for me is the change in philosophy for the offense. And because of that change of philosophy, I believe it's going to allow, number one, more guys to get involved, okay? And number two, it's going to show the depth of this wide receiving core, because I think there's some electricity in that room that people don't necessarily know about yet. Now, we don't really know because we haven't really seen him on the field a whole lot, but Kevin Austin is an excellent, excellent, excellent receiver. He can do everything top to bottom that you need a receiver to do at Notre Dame or any college team, okay? If he's healthy, he's going to be dynamic, okay? He's going to be the alpha of the wide receiving core, okay? And I say that for obvious reasons. Number two, Braden Lindsay. We know what he can do. We've seen it, right? But can he do it on a consistent basis? That remains to be seen. That's going to be fun to watch. If they use him correctly, which I think that they will do, not have him out there the entire game, he's going to last physically, and he's going to be able to be electric, right? Well, then after those two guys, then you get to Avery Davis, Lawrence Keys, in my opinion, right? And those guys are your quote-unquote slot guys. Well, we've seen flashes of what Avery Davis can do, right? We saw the big catch against Clemson. There should have been another big catch against Clemson the second time. There were times where he was running open where he wasn't getting the ball. We saw him break off his route, find the open area, and catch that final touchdown that Ian Book threw against Clemson. I think he's really coming into his own as a wide receiver, which really excites me because he's one heck of an athlete, right? And we project him to start in the slot, and I think he's going to be very, very productive. And then Lawrence Keys. Lawrence Keys, I feel like, to me, is kind of one of the forgotten guys in this wide receiver room because, look, he was returning punts. He got benched because he fumbled. He was putting up numbers as a wide receiver, fumbled the ball, didn't see a whole lot more of Lawrence Keys. Well, Lawrence Keys is a really, really good receiver in the slot. He is a very, very good route runner. He can make guys miss in space. He's the kind of guy that you want running RPOs, okay? And that's what we feel like this Notre Dame offense is going to have, right? And so I think you're going to see a resurgence from Lawrence Keys, and I think you're going to see a heck of a 1-2 punch between Avery Davis and Lawrence Keys in the slot. Well, then, okay, let's go down to the next level, right? Xavier Watts. He's a guy that Brian and I are very high on because we know what he did in high school. We saw a glimpse of what he could do, right, in the one practice that we got to see. But we saw what he could do in those 3-minute videos in the spring. We saw what he could do in the spring game.
And Tommy Reese sounded really high on him.
You could see the change in his face during that interview that you did with Tommy Reese, right? So Xavier Watts is a guy that's going to get the ball in his hands, and it's going to be so much fun to watch, right? And I really hope that he is able to get the ball on the field side, right? That's where I think he can be the most electric because there's room for him to operate. When a guy like that with his skill set, when he's got more room to operate and he's not confined by the 12th defender, which is the sideline, I just think he can be special. And I think he could be a really good 1-2 punch with Braden Lindsay out there on the outside. Then you throw in Joe Wilkins, right? And Joe Wilkins could be, that second guy in the boundary. Well, do I think Joe Wilkins is a starter? No. But do I think Joe Wilkins can bring something special to this offense? Absolutely. In spurts, Joe Wilkins could be really, really good.
Yeah. Okay. Solid. I wouldn't say that. I don't think he's ever shown anything that make you say he's really, really good. I think he can be a really good part of the rotation.
Role. I feel like in his role, he could be good. And that's what I'm talking about with Joe Wilkins. So I just named off, 6 different guys.
And you didn't mention Deion Colsey. You didn't mention Lorenzo Stiles.
Any of those new guys coming in.
Jaden Thomas.
Right. I just feel like the depth is such that you're not going to see a whole lot of drop-off when they go to sub-packages. And I think you're going to see sub-packages, which is huge because that's been our biggest complaint is that they're not getting enough guys on the field. I think that's going to change this year. Whether they go, 6 deep, whether they go 6+, who knows? And again, your point, Brian, that you made earlier about can this group sustain an injury and still be effective? I think the answer is a resounding yes.
Whereas last year they weren't necessarily in a position to do that because now, let's see, that gets us back to the question of a lot of this is going to be kind of, does Del Alexander make changes as a coach?
Sure.
Does he do more things where he starts getting, he understands look, this isn't 1997 anymore. This isn't 2005 anymore. If you can't get young players ready to play, you're not doing your job effectively. There was I haven't had a chance. I've had a lot of people ask me about that Inside the Garage podcast that Kyle Hamilton, Cam Hart, KJ Wallace, and Connor Radigan are doing. I haven't watched any of it yet. I don't watch other podcasts. I have no problem with it. I think everyone should go watch it. I support the players,
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't watch, just like I don't listen to, I have a great deal of respect for Tim Priester. And, when Lou was around, you all know I had no one I had more respect for than Lou. I didn't listen to their podcast. I don't read what they write. I don't have time to do all that. And I like to kind of have my head clear of anyone else's ideas so that can make sure that what I'm coming up with is my idea.
Sure.
But somebody sent me a clip of something that Connor Radigan was saying. They were talking about how I guess the DBs were referring to how Mike Mickens is like a big brother, and Connor Radigan was like, yeah, it's not really what it's like in the receiver room. He wasn't taking a shot at Coach Alexander, but he made the point is it takes a long time to gain his trust. Well, to me, that's an old school way of looking at it. Part of it is, players got to gain the trust, but it's your job to coach him up and get him ready to where he can be trusted. It's what I've been saying for a long time. Shouldn't be up to the 18-year-old to earn your trust. It should be up to you as the coach to freaking coach the 18-year-old to be ready to play. And that's got to change. But the difference this year compared to last year is I feel like this team is better prepared to handle that without the freshman. So even if he doesn't make changes, this is still going to be a good group. And I personally would I'm going to kind of cheat and lump and put the tight ends in with this group.
Oh,
because the tight ends are so important to the pass game. And the tight ends are also important as to why I'm confident in the receivers, because they don't need Kevin Austin to be the alpha because they have Michael Mayer. Having Michael Mayer and then having the running backs as part of your pass game takes a lot of the pressure off the receivers. That's another reason that I'm confident in that group, is because I think they're going to be capable of going out and just saying, hey, Braden Lindsay, you don't have to be Will Fuller. We're not asking you to be Will Fuller. We're asking you to be Braden Lindsay. Lawrence Keys, we're not asking you to be Devontae Smith. We're asking you to be Lawrence Keys. And I think where you and I still disagree a little bit, Vince, is I still think Lawrence can and will play a lot outside. I think if Lawrence is as good as I think he's going to be and as good as you think he's going to be, and Avery Davis is as good as we think he's going to be, you have to figure out a way to get them on the field together.
That makes sense.
No, especially when you have a guy like Braden Lindsay who's not necessarily a 65 snap per game guy. So I think you need to do that, and I think Lawrence's route running. You've talked about the skill sets needed to play out there that he has, and I agree with you on those: speed, route running ability, things like that. No, he's not the ideal size, which is why I'm not saying he's going to start and play 65 snaps outside. I think they should all move around. My hope, and this is the one thing I don't know, this is me talking. My hope is that we see a lot of interchangeableness this year, that we don't just see the W, the X, and the Z. I hope we don't see that this year. I hope it's like one snap, Kevin Austin's backside and Lawrence Keys is in the slot and Avery Davis is outside. And the next snap, Avery Davis's backside or Lawrence Keys' backside and Kevin Austin's in the slot, or the other guy's in the slot, and just mix it up, move it around, right? My confidence also comes from not even anticipating Kevin Austin being the dude that we all think he can be, because I'm at this point in time with him. I'll believe it when I see it.
Foot injuries are so. I mean,
well, it's not even just that. It's just we've been here before, right?
Sure.
And Kevin is incredibly talented. To me, Kevin is a day 1, day 2 NFL draft pick talent. I mean, he is, in my opinion. I think Kevin's a good kid. I've never, he's made some bad choices. I think we're past that now. It's just one of those things where it's like, I can't count on him. And this is me looking at it from a coach's standpoint. I can't count on you until you prove to me that you can show up every day. And for different reasons, Kevin hasn't been able to answer that bell the last couple of years. So if he can answer that bell, then this group is not only has a chance to be really good, this group has a chance to be special. And it's a little different than the Alabama group from last year or the LSU group from 2 years ago. I don't think there's not a Devontae Smith out there. There's not a Justin Jefferson out there, right? Now, Kevin Austin can be a Jamar Chase type. He's not going to have the volume because they threw the ball so much more than Notre Dame's going to throw the ball, but you get that similar body type, similar physicality, similar skill set, right? He can fill that role. And Kevin Austin could be really, really, really good. It's more about just the depth of options that this group has, because they can go 6, 7, 8 deep. And so there's 2 keys to this group becoming special. One, it's Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsay both being healthy, especially Kevin Austin. And not just being healthy, but being on the field every day. The other piece to this is if Del Alexander steps up and makes the necessary coaching changes he needs to make to actually prepare young guys. And it's not always about you needing them to do all the work and earn your trust, but you doing the work you need to do. Like one of the other things that Connor Radigan talked about is like, we get in there, we watch our film, we do this, and it's like, no. You're doing this whole thing wrong. Again, where's your extra time? Where are you putting the extra time? Where are you doing this? Where are you doing that? That's where you need to do. If Del Alexander makes those changes, then this group could be special. I'm not anticipating that. Again, I got to see it. I'll see it when I believe it. But even if he doesn't do that, this still has a chance to be a really good group. And I'm confident in this group. Now, can it be game-changing? Can it be good enough to win a national title? That remains to be seen. That requires Kevin Austin, what we talked about, and Dell Alexander to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
But at least just with 10-2 plus, no question, this group can be a key ingredient to that, in my opinion. And again, when you start putting the tight ends in, because Michael Mayer is to the offense what I view Kyle Hamilton as being to the defense.
Sure.
Right. And the reason we didn't go with him as one of the 5 just by himself is because, again, he's still a sophomore. He's still, there's still parts of his game he has to prove. But I'm cheating a bit by putting the tight ends in there, because I think when you look at Michael Mayer and George Takis and Kane Barong and guys like that you add that to this mixture, which you have to do if you're Notre Dame, if you're covering Notre Dame, because of how much they use the tight ends, that I look at that and say, that's another reason that Notre Dame can sustain from a number standpoint a couple injuries, as long as those, if let's just say they lose Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsay for a game this year, you still have Avery Davis, you still have Lawrence Keys, you still have Xavier Watts, you still have the freshman, you still have Joe Wilkins, plus Michael Mayer, George Takis, Kane Barong, right? Plus Kyron Williams, plus Chris Tyree. They'll be fine. And so then those smaller number of receivers are still going to produce. And that's where it comes down to for me. So let's go number 5, Vince. And this is another one that I think is going to surprise some people. That is quarterback.
I think it's definitely going to surprise
quarterback.
Yeah.
I was surprised that you had it on your list, to be honest. I thought that was going to be because what we're going to do is we're going to take the couple we agreed on, and then we each get a couple that we don't disagree on. Hey, Vince, here's yours, here's mine. But we had all 5 on the same list. And Vince cheated and had 6, but it's all good.
I did.
But
that's because I was like, oh, yeah, duh, defensive line.
Quarterback is one, and it's not Jack Cohn. Neither of us put Jack Cohn. It was quarterback room. And it goes back to the fact that I think Jack Cohn's going to start. I have a great deal of confidence in Jack Cohn. I think Jack Cohn's going to have a really good year and surprise a lot of people.
Yep.
But that's not required for the quarterback position to be a strength this year for me. I have a lot more confidence in the entire depth chart that this group is going to produce this season. So that, to me, quarterback is, and again, part of it is Jack Cohn, but it's not just Jack Cohn, right? That's the thing for me.
Well, and let's say we're going to compare this quarterback room to last year's quarterback room, okay? And say what you want to about, Ian Book and all these different things. Whether I liked Ian Book or I didn't like Ian Book or whatever, that's not the point. The point is, if Ian Book went down last year in 2020, this team looks a lot different, okay? Because I wasn't as confident in the quarterback room last year as I am this year. And yes, Drew Pine is still there. And, I just feel like Drew Pine has taken enough of a step from his freshman year, right, to now his sophomore year, to where if something happens to Jack Cohn, I have complete confidence in Drew Pine taking over and running the offense the exact same way that Jack Cohn would, right? There may be some bumps in the road because he'd be a brand new starter and hasn't taken any collegiate snaps. Wait, and he's taken a couple, you know what I mean? Legit collegiate snaps, right, as a starter or whatever. So I'm sure there would be some bumps in the road, but when it all comes down to it, I feel like Drew Pine could run this offense just fine. And then you go down to Tyler Buckner, and Tyler Buckner has, more question marks than a lot of guys because he's only played 1 year of high school football, and it was 2 years ago, right? I still think Tyler Buckner can be an amazing quarterback at Notre Dame. I just don't know that it's going to be in 2021. That's all. And now,
but right now he's their third option in as the full-time
quarterback. Right. Now, could there be, a niche position for him? Absolutely. Because
we've both advocated for that. We'd both love to see that.
Because you look and see, okay, what does he do really, really well? Okay, you can do this. Let's build something around that just to switch it up, just to get you some playing time, to really make this offense even more dynamic. Let's go with it. I believe that they should be doing that, but I still believe that Drew Pine should be the official number 2 quarterback, right? Because if something happens to Cohn, I want Pine in there as my quarterback, right? Yep. And so, but top to bottom, let's say something drastic happens and they lose their top 2 quarterbacks, and now Tyler Buckner has to go in. Okay, he has the talent to do it. Now, it could be bumpy. He could definitely be bumpy, but he has the talent to do it. Right. It'd be like if, and I hate to say this out loud because I'm sure people are going to yell at me, but like if you threw in a raw Phil Dracovic in his first year, right? It would be bumpy, but he's got talent, he's got a big arm,
right.
can
And
run
because
around.
he can make plays with his legs, that's the other part of it.
Can run around, exactly. And so that's the way I kind of see it. But from top to bottom,
you left the guy that
Brendan
spent
Clark.
you left the guy that spent most of last season as the backup quarterback off.
Correct.
Conversation.
Yes,
Which again speaks volumes to it. Who has the strongest arm on the roster? Well,
Brendan Clark.
Brendan Clark. And it's
Absolutely.
not close.
Yeah,
it's not close.
He's got a cannon. An absolute
Brendan
cannon.
Clark's also a really athletic football player.
Yep.
And again, we're not even talking about him. We're barely talking about him. We've barely talked about him all summer because we just expect him to kind of be buried. But again, we expect him to be buried because he's a raw player. What if he makes big strides this summer in fall camp, right? I mean, that goes into the confidence. Look, part of being confident in a group is, does it have or not have a wide margin, a bigger margin for error? That's the reason we said Kyle Hamilton and not the secondary.
Right.
Right.
Or even the safety group. I mean,
correct.
Yeah.
Because there are still too many. There's still, other than Kyle Hamilton, there's a very small margin for error. When I look at quarterback, things would change if Jack Cohn's not playing, but Notre Dame's not putting in. I don't even want to say a name because it would seem like it was disrespectful. Like the first guy off the bench when Dane Chris got hurt in 2010 was not Tommy Rees. It was Nate Montana, right? It was a little different situation. And then they had to go that year to Tommy Rees and they won ball games, right? Well, does anyone want to tell me that Tommy Rees has more physical talent than what Tyler Buckner has? And here's the other thing too. The Notre Dame offensive coordinator has a pretty good idea of what it's like to be a freshman quarterback at Notre Dame being thrust into a position because of injuries. He's not going to put a ton on Tyler's shoulders. He's going to remember, because what was Tommy Rees's record as a starting quarterback as a true freshman at Notre Dame? He was undefeated. He went 4-0, including a win over a number 15 team in the country, Utah, including a dominating win over Miami in a Rose Bowl, Sun Bowl game. Point being, what the coaches did then was they didn't ask Tommy Rees to go win a bunch of games. Run the offense, don't make mistakes, and when the opportunity comes, we need you to make some throws. And that's exactly what he did. And then the same thing's going to be asked of Tyler Buckner, but Tyler Buckner has way more talent. And that's not a knock on Tommy Rees. Tyler Buckner has more talent, to me, as a true freshman than any quarterback of the last decade not named Ever Golson or Phil Dracovic. So, that's why I'm confident in this group, is that it's Jack Cohn, it's Drew Pine, it's Tyler Buckner, it's Brendan Clark. As a unit, they're going to get good quarterback play this year, in my opinion. It's just about who's it going to be. Again, if everybody's healthy, then this is a no-brainer one. Mm-hmm. They can sustain one injury and still be okay. Now you start getting down into two, then who's going to be good at losing two quarterbacks? Nobody. So again, we're talking about, we anticipate people being healthy, or maybe just one injury. I think they're going to be fine. Right. And that's where I'm at with this group.
Well, like if Drew Pine had to have a spot start because, Cohn rolled an ankle or busted a rib or, whatever, maybe he has to start 2 or 3 games, in the middle of the season. Okay. Like
my win-loss predictions so one thing we're going to do before the season, little sneak preview. We're going to have several shows. We're going to do some bold predictions, kind of overview of the season, and we're going to make predictions. Here's the record. Here's what I anticipate the record being. We're going to do that before the season. I will tell you right now, there's not a game on the schedule that I look at right now that I have Notre Dame winning that I would put in the loss column as a prediction if Drew Pine had to start. Not one.
Agree.
Not one. Now, could the game be a little bit more dicey? Could a mistake change the outcome more than if a veteran was playing? Sure. But can Drew Pine go out there and with the talent around him?
That's the key.
Because again, what have we talked about? Talented running backs, talented receivers, talented tight ends. Offensive line, we're not going to talk about today. We're going to talk about that one on Wednesday. But there's still
spoiler alert.
Yeah, there's still some there's still a lot to work with there. Jarrett Patterson was one of your 6.
That was one of my 6. Him as an individual, he was absolutely on my list. Yes.
So there's a lot around him. This isn't a situation where you're asking Tyler Buckner or Drew Pine to come in and say, okay, you got to put this team on your shoulders. Right. That's not needed. So again, I mean, if Drew Pine, and I know this isn't something that everyone's going to agree with, but if Drew Pine had to start a game this year, my prediction would not change unless Notre Dame's just not as good of a team. But again, this is going off of what we know about this team right now. I wouldn't change my prediction.
Or if there are other major injuries around him that would.
Right. There's always those asterisks of things that we can't know or can't control. Right. But I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change a single win-loss in my opinion on that. So that's where I am. So Kyle Hamilton, the Notre Dame running backs, the Notre Dame defensive line, the receiver/tight end group, and the quarterback room. Those are the 5 things that we are most certain of at Irish Breakdown about Notre Dame heading into the season. Now, hopefully, I think we would all agree, hopefully by the end of fall camp, we are not questioning whether or not any of those 5 should be on the list.
Hopefully.
That would be bad. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of the fall camp and we get ready for Florida State on September 5th, that we've added some groups to that list. That's obviously the goal. But those are the 5 right now, as of Monday, August 2nd, the groups that we are most confident in for Notre Dame heading into the 2020 season. So that's going to do it for this portion of the podcast. Before you don't go, we're going to have Q&A coming up right next. But if you're listening via podcast, give us a 5-star review. And before we move on to the Q&A, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and stay locked into everything we got going on at irishbreakdown.com. So, Vince.
Yes, sir.
It's Q&A time, buddy.
Okay,
Let's
man.
go.
This is like a mini Friday. So when we get to Q&A, it's like mini Friday. So I dig it. All right. So
and by the way, we have figured out the problem with the iPad. It has been corrected. And so tomorrow we will Vince and I'll test it out again beforehand, but we anticipate having a little bit of football 101 tomorrow. So got some topics lined up. I think we're going to go coverages tomorrow, explaining what coverages mean.
Cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, etc.
What they mean, what it looks like.
There are so many coverages. We could be here all day.
We're going to do the basic stuff.
The basic ones.
We're going to explain like 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll explain what combo coverages mean.
Okay.
Just generally speaking, what combo coverages mean.
Awesome. Can't wait. I love that. Which is also another thing that I learned when I became a coach was all the different coverages.
And how people call them differently. When I was at Muhlenberg
absolutely. College,
we called cover 3, cover 8. No idea why.
Really? No kidding.
We just had these weird names for things, and I could never understand what it meant. Like usually say cover 7. Okay, well that's technically cover 3, but you're dropping 7. Nope, didn't mean that. It just
no.
Yeah.
Just random.
Whatever.
It had to be different. There's people out there just have to be different, and that's
it
really,
worked. He was a genius, so I didn't argue with him. Well,
exactly.
I didn't argue with him out loud.
It's another conversation for other time. All right, Brandon jumping in here first. He says, Brian, do you feel with Notre Dame's recent uptick in recruiting consistently at a high level that Brian Kelly and the staff might not rely on the 4-game redshirt so much and allow these younger players to play more since the depth is finally starting to come to fruition at several positions and looks to continue that way into the future based off current recruiting?
I hope so, but this is still the same coach who didn't play Aaron Lynch and Stephon Tuitt against Michigan in 2011 because they weren't ready.
Right.
So as we're watching Denard Robinson chase, be chased by Carlo Calabrese and guys like that for the fourth quarter as Michigan came back from a 24-7 deficit to win.
Oh, I hated that game.
And Aaron Lynch and Stephon Tuitt are sitting on the sidelines, right? So I don't want to say that just because they're have they signed a better duo at defensive end since they signed Aaron Lynch and Stephon Tuitt in 2011? The answer is no. That was a rhetorical question. Look, I have to see it. I'm hopeful, Brandon. I'm hopeful that that's the case. I'm hopeful that, and I think it's going to be, I'm more confident it's going to happen on defense. Because Marcus Freeman said it in the interview, and he said it in other interviews, the one we did with Chris Zortz especially, said, look, with this new transfer rule, you have to be willing to play more guys. You have to be willing to give guys a taste. When guys have worked hard and they can help you, you got to find a way for them to help you. You don't just say, well, you're number 2, and the way that it works around here is the number 1 gets 80% of the snaps. No, I'm not going to do it that way.
Right.
There's also practical reasons beyond just the transfer thing that because the transfer thing's kind of like down on the list. He's saying it, but it's down on the list. The most practical reason is you want to keep guys fresh. And then the second reason is you have a variety of skill sets. You want to use all those skill sets. And then the third is you want to keep guys engaged. Will it happen on offense?
We'll see.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Tommy Rees sounds really, going back to the spring, Tommy Rees sounds really happy with Lorenzo Styles. Lorenzo has an advantage over Jordan Johnson and Xavier Watts in that he had a full spring. Jordan wasn't even here in the spring last year. Xavier had 1 practice, and then everybody was sent home and did distance learning the rest of the year. So Brandon, the premise of your question is spot on. That's how it should be. I think, to me, I'm only redshirting two types of players. One is linemen. I'm still a fan of
not
that.
Physically ready.
Yeah, right. And then not physically. I just think linemen tend to be. The NFL tends to value age and experience for linemen more than it does skill.
Yeah.
And same thing with experience. They'll take a raw receiver early where they may not take a raw offensive tackle early who's only played 1 year. And so I feel like I'm okay redshirting linemen. I'm okay redshirting skill players that are just either undersized and not physically ready to play, or guys that are maybe learning a new position. I'm okay there. But other than that, it's like I'm not a huge – linebackers is probably another one, where I'd consider it physically. But, look, most great players aren't going to be fifth-year guys, right? Sure. And to Brandon's point, when you're recruiting the way that Notre Dame is recruiting right now, assuming they can continue it, would you rather have a solid fifth-year player, or would you rather have a really talented freshman as part of that work group, right? If a guy's an impact player, he's not coming back for a fifth year. That doesn't mean you still won't bring back your Drew Whites and guys like that. You will. And Drew White would have been a guy that I would have redshirted, number one, because of injuries, number two, because he was undersized. He would have needed a year in the weight room. But I'm not redshirting, some of the guys that Notre Dame has chosen to redshirt in recent years. I'm not redshirting Braden Lindsay. There's no reason to. I'm not redshirting Lawrence Keys. There's no reason to. Mm-hmm. I'm not, just go down the list. You're just look what redshirting Tony Jones did for you. I mean, if a running back was ever going to be a fifth-year guy, Tony Jones was going to be it, right? I mean,
sure.
He knew he was going to be likely an undrafted free agent, but he was ready to go start his career. I mean, even him with the uncertainty, it wasn't like he was afraid he's going to get beat out the next year by anybody, right? Just, hey, I'm ready to go. So what's the point of redshirting running back? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But my hope is that they do more of that. You also have to balance. Guys have to earn playing time. I think that expression gets way overplayed by people. Well, you got to earn it. Okay. What does that mean? That's like such a broad – that's different for everybody.
Right, exactly. Sometimes
your talent should earn you playing time, and if you don't know the offense, then it's up to the coach to make sure he flipping coach. I mean, what else are they there for, right? If your job isn't to teach guys how to execute, then what are you here for?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's just to monitor when the players have got themselves ready, then you can save yourself some money, go have a GA coach that position, and then he can monitor it. But the point being, the talent sometimes should dictate it. And then it's your job to go get guys ready, but not always can look. Some guys the light doesn't go on, right? It's just the part of the game. But you need to make sure that you exhaust that as a coach. But barring that, yeah, I think they should play more guys.
All right, we got a couple comments here as far as who people have the most confidence in. So I'll throw those up here. Notre Dame 2164 running back, definitely confident in our running backs. Agreed. They made our list. John A1, happy Monday. Greatest confidence is with the running back, with tight end coming in a close second. I'm sure he means Michael Mayer, but the tight end position does not come in a close second.
Yeah, there's a lot to prove there.
Yes.
No, I think they're going to play well, and that's why I included them with there. I mean, we could have done Michael Mayer by himself, but I didn't want to be too obvious. But that's why I kind of brought him into the receiver conversation because of how I think he's going to be used. But the tight end group still, it's a lot of promise. And Vince's guy, George Takis, who I'm really excited to see this year. But
me too.
There's a lot to prove there.
There's a lot to prove there. No question. John Klimek says, Brandon, I hope BK gets the 11 best on the field and finds ways to get the younger players to get their snaps. Of course, we all hope that as well. Let's see. No, here we go. John says, when I first read today's topic, I thought I'd be saying defensive line because of the depth, but almost everyone except Heinisch will be in a new role. I still expect the D-line to be the strength of the defense. Yes, the D-line will be a strength of the defense. And even though there are going to be in new positions, I still feel like they will be they've got experience, and so they're going to be just fine.
But people are dying for this Purdue Toledo preview. Kevin Thomas, when y'all continue on the opponent previews, people asking about Purdue Toledo as it means we get to the rest faster. Season is fast approaching. Excited for the year. Look, the news is there's been things that have come up that to me are just more important to talk about than Toledo and Purdue and the rest of those. But we are barring some dramatic change, some dramatic news breaking. We will be doing the Toledo and Purdue podcast tomorrow, and then we will do the counter to this on Wednesday, and then we'll get to the others as we talked about earlier. But yes, we plan on doing that. And on Irish Breakdown, we're going to be doing a lot of previews coming up here on the site too. So like today, this afternoon, I'm going to have I'm going to rank the opponents and kind of do an overview on each opponent. Today, I'm going to do 7 through 12. Tomorrow, I'll do 1 through 6. Then I'm going to have an all opponent team offense, all opponent team defense. 5 best backfields, 5 best receiving cores, 5 best lines, all kinds. So that's all going to happen on the website too at irishbreakdown.com. So make sure you look for all that kind of stuff.
Mike Gardner has a suggestion for you, Brian. He says, idea for the name of the message board, read post opinion, RPO.
I like that.
I like where your head's at.
I like that.
I like where your head's at, Mike. That's good stuff right there. I dig it.
I like that. Thinking outside the box.
That's right. Josh says, I would have to go with the most experience and depth on the defensive line, linebacker, then running back. But besides Williams, who played well, Tyree still needs more time, and I would need to see year 2 before I can be confident at running back.
Yeah, I strongly disagree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what more time Chris Tyree needs. Whenever he got the ball, he was really good.
Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't have
I've actually read a lot
either.
of people that were really critical of Chris Tyree last year, and I don't know what your expectations were. I don't know if he was supposed to look like Adrian Peterson as a freshman, but I thought Chris Tyree he averaged 6.8 yards a carry. He didn't get a lot of opportunities, but when he got opportunities, he played really well.
Right.
So, I mean, and again, he's your number 2. I could understand where Josh was coming from if we were talking about, like, let's just say Kyron, wasn't around and can Chris Tyree be that? Well, I mean, we need to see that. He needs to prove he can be a 15+ carry guy, but as the number 2 back, I think he's going to be really good. I think this has a chance to be one of the 2 or 3 best duos in the entire country at running back, in my opinion.
Well, let's put it this way. If people are unsure about what Chris Tyree can do, I think they're going to be very pleasantly surprised.
Sure, but I guess I have a harder time. Vince, you come to an opinion and you evaluate something, and then you talk to other people, and they're sharing it, and you kind of get taken back, like, wow, I assumed we were going to talk about certain things, but that wasn't something I assumed people were going to be critical of.
Right.
So it surprised me a little bit. This is here. I mean, there's a decent amount of pushback of Chris Tyree's performance last year, which is really surprising. I'll take a guy that's not that good at 6.8 yards per carry any day of the week.
Quick Click Nick says, it's just hard for me to be excited. At the end of spring, Brian Kelly said the team is good, but not yet great. We lose our quarterback and our line and our wide receivers. I just don't see how we can improve to compete for a national championship.
Can I take that one, Vince?
Oh, please do.
Every coach in the country is going to say that about their team in the spring. If Notre Dame would have had to play Alabama on May 8th, they probably wouldn't have looked great. But neither would Alabama, who's losing a lot of players. So I understand the whole – I think there should always be a little bit of a healthy, I'm not sure what this team is going to look like, right? I always think there should be some of that, as well as a healthy optimism for, I'm excited about what this team could be. I think that kind of fair analysis is something that we always try to provide here. That's why we're doing things we're most confident in today, but then we're going to talk in the next show – the similar show, we're going to talk about the things we're concerned about. I think there should always be sort of that balance of I'm really excited about the year, but these are the areas that if it doesn't go well, can hold them back. But I mean, that's what happens in college football, right? I mean, you lose players, and Alabama is losing a guy that won him a national title, was a first-round NFL draft pick, and Ohio State lost a top 10 NFL draft pick. And their returning starting quarterback and again, I'm saying this blanketly because it doesn't matter who starts a quarterback. Their starting quarterback this year is going to be a guy that's never thrown a pass in college football. It doesn't matter who it is. The entire depth chart has 0 career pass attempts. So Notre Dame isn't the only team replacing an offensive line, a quarterback. The offensive line, again, Alabama lost 3 offensive linemen. Their top 2 linemen were drafted higher than Notre Dame's number 1 lineman. They lost Devontae Smith, Notre Dame, and Jalen Waddle. Notre Dame lost Javon McKinley and Ben Skoranek, right? Nobody's thinking Alabama's not going to be still really good because they reload. Well, in my opinion, Notre Dame has proven in the last 4 years that they're in reload mode.
Right.
You know, I mean, look, 2017, they go 10-3. They finish in the top 15. Really, really good team. They lose Mike McGlinchey. They lose hold on a second. Excuse me, I thought I was going to sneeze. They lose Mike McGlinchey. They lose Quentin Nelson. Alex Bars goes down in September. They lose Josh Adams, who rushed for 1,400 yards. They played the first 4 games of the season, including a game against their best opponent of the regular season, Michigan, by far, without Dexter Williams, and that team went 12-0.
Right.
Then the next year, they lose Jerry Tillery as the first-round NFL draft. I mean, they lose Miles Boykin. They lose Zalazay Mack, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Dexter Williams. They go out the next year, and they're 10-2. You know, I mean, then they lose all the guys they lost from that year's team. You know, they lose Jalin Akwara and Khalid Kareem and Alohi Gilman and Troy Pride and Jalen Elliott. And again, Osmar Bilal, and rinse, recycle, right? Rinse, recycle. And they go out and they make the playoff again. I mean, Notre Dame has reloaded everywhere in the last 4 years. With all due respect to Ian Book, and we're going to have another question about this coming up soon, which is, again, it's a very fair question. They're not replacing him with a guy that's never played before. They're replacing him with a guy that's been to the Rose Bowl, that's won 10 games as a starter at Wisconsin, whose 3 of the 4 losses that he had as a starting quarterback that year were to the number 5 and number 3 teams in the country because they lost Ohio State twice. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that if you kind of look around college football, everybody's going through this right now.
Sure.
Clemson's having to replace arguably the greatest player they've ever had in Trevor Lawrence. I truly believe that, at least of my lifetime. They're having to replace the greatest running back they've had in 30 years, if not ever. They're replacing their 2 starting receivers, their 2 best receivers. They're also replacing the only good offensive lineman they had last year in Jackson Carman. And no one's expecting them to take a step back. And so I think that it's time to recognize the program that Coach Kelly has built in that. Am I expecting them to compete for a natty? Well, quick click, Nick. If everyone that they had last year was coming back, they still have a lot to prove as far as winning a natty because none of the guys they had last year helped them win a natty. So that's more of a bigger picture program thing. But to me, the lack of talent, the talent is not an issue for Notre Dame. It's, are you still able to maximize that talent? That's still the bigger question that has to be answered. But, I mean, those things are losses, but everyone's going through losses, and they're replacing those guys with, look, yeah, it stinks to lose Liam Eichenberg, and you're going to start a true freshman there. Is he going to be as good as Liam Eichenberg? Not this year, but you're replacing him with a stud, just a young stud, right? I mean, that's part. We're not asking a walk-on to step up and replace Javon McKinley or, it's really good football players are stepping into those roles, and that's why I'm confident. Plus, you got to think about this too. Michael Mayer's going to be better this year than he was last year. He's a year older. Kyle Williams is a year older. Chris Tyree is a year older. You get Braden Lindsay and Kevin Austin back from not being healthy last year. So those are areas too where you got to look at and say those are. I mean, having Kevin Austin, if he's healthy all year, if Braden Lindsay's healthy all year, those are like 2 additions to the offense because they didn't have them last year.
Yeah, like free agent acquisitions.
Yeah, because what you had last year that was wearing the number 0 jersey was not Braden Lindsay. I mean, because he just was never. I mean, he was healthy. He was hurt in camp. He was never the same guy. Kevin Austin was hurt in the summer. Was never the same guy. By the time he finally started getting healthy, he broke his foot again. He caught 1 pass. They didn't have those guys last year. They're having those now. Again, assuming they're healthy. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I mean, it's a very fair. I'm not pushing back on you per se. I mean, I don't agree with you, but I understand the skepticism. I'm just trying to help you look at it with a little bit more context to get you a little bit excited about the years because I want you to be excited. This is going to be a fun year. Are they going to win the Natty? I don't know, but I'm excited about what this team is going to be. I think it's going to be a really fun ride.
Sean Higgins, do some of the items, Mills, Foskey, etc., you mentioned in your D-line scoop over the weekend, give you cause for concern about that group being one of the strengths of the team this season?
So what Sean is referring to is we did an insider scoop. Is that on Friday, Vince, for the D-line? I believe it was on Friday.
I think it was Friday. I was reading through it today.
Put an inside scoop on there where I just went through a bunch of the defensive linemen. And there wasn't just one D lineman I didn't mention. There were 4, just for the record, for people putting false information out there. But one of the scoops was Isaiah Foskey. It was look, love the talent, but he's got to still take the next step. That doesn't concern me, Sean, to be honest with you, because that's kind of where I expected him to be in the spring. There's also a lot of excitement about what he can be. It's just trying to tamper down, like he may not look like Lawrence Taylor against Florida State, right? There's still a level to go to. The one about Riley Mills, no, it doesn't, because I like Riley Mills a lot. But part of the thing with Riley is it's not that he's taking a step back. It's just maybe he didn't take the big step forward, but it's also about Jacob Lacey and how good Jacob Lacey is. Let's not forget 2 years ago, Jacob Lacey was the stud D-line recruit for Notre Dame.
Right.
So, and that's also, Sean, if anything, it adds to my excitement about what this team can be. Not so much the Foskey thing, because if he doesn't play at an elite level, or not elite level, if he doesn't take a big jump this year, I do think that hurts the D-line, but I don't think my optimism of the defensive line, to your question, and I don't know if this is true for you, Vince, but my optimism isn't centered around only Isaiah Foskey.
Right. It's the depth. It's MTAs who I'm really excited to see.
And Jason Adamiola. Foskey playing at a high level is a big part of that. Sure. But to me, it's just the waves and the depth they can throw at people. Plus, I think their best defensive lineman this year is going to be Jason Adamiola, not Isaiah Foskey. And Vince actually, I think, probably leans more towards Myron Tungvaloa being their best lineman this year.
Yeah, I do.
I still think Isaiah Foskey's a year away from being that first-round NFL draft pick kind of guy. I think some of that speculation on him for this year is a little bit too soon for me, because he is a raw player. But I still think he's going to be a good football player. I mean, he had 4.5 sacks last year in a spot role. I don't think he's going to be less than that, right? And so when I talk in that update, Sean, just to understand the context, the update isn't like, oh, he's not going to play well. The update is he's not at the point where he's maximized his potential yet. It's not a, gee, he may stink now. It's more of a, well, I think he can be an elite guy. I think he can be a game-changing type of player.
Right.
Not quite there yet. But that means, so what? He's still pretty good, 5-6 sack guy. So I just want to make sure the context is understood there.
Yeah.
It's like with anything else. When I criticize Brian Kelly, it's being that I'm holding him to the standard of winning a national championship, which is why I was way less critical of Brian Kelly my first few years covering him than I am now, despite the fact he has more success now, because the expectation was different when he first took over the program,
right?
Because of what he was inheriting. So it's all about the context and what you grade it against. And the context for Isaiah Foskey is he playing at that elite level that you thought that you think he can play at and that you hope he can play at? We got a super chat here too.
Yes, we do. Yeah, you can go ahead and grab that one.
Brandon Plensner. So go ahead, Vince.
It says Reed Walker was at UM's barbecue this past weekend.
That's a Maureen Walker, by the way.
Oh,
just so
Red Walker.
Yeah, just.
Red Walker was at UM's barbecue this past weekend. Does the Notre Dame coaching staff explain to verbal commits that visiting rivals while committed is a huge no-no?
Yeah, it's frowned upon. It's definitely frowned upon. I don't want to speak for the staff because I haven't heard from anybody yet about their thoughts on this. What I can say is, in the past, when he made visits with other schools, Ole Miss, LSU, Alabama, it was with his team.
Right. Yeah.
And he went with his team. And so they were okay with that. The Walker family was very good. Hey, look, he's solid. He's this, that, or the other. I must say, for me, I'm a little bit more curious how it's going to be responded to now, because this was not a team event. This was after he's taken his official to Notre Dame, this was a recruiting event. This wasn't anything other than that. Michigan has already offered him, so it's not like he's going there to work out or anything like that. So I'd be a little bit more frustrated if I was Notre Dame. I wouldn't accept the whole, oh, don't worry, we're committed thing as much. Mm-hmm. I don't know what their answer is yet, and I'm going to continue to try to find that out. But I don't know if the staff was aware or not. I don't know if I don't have the answer yet. I haven't heard back from that yet. But now this is Brian Driscoll giving his opinion. I would have to think that there's going to be a greater level of frustration than before because it's a different type of situation.
Yeah.
See, people ask me, well, what would you do about it? Honestly, I would tell them, okay, you need to make your decision right now. Do you want to be in our class or not? That means no more visits, no more team visits, no more going to visit a friend on a Saturday in Tuscaloosa, right? None of that. You're either with us or you're not, because we got guys. Because here's the deal. There are receivers that Notre Dame will be turning away because they are committed to Maureen Walker. Fact.
Sure.
Okay. If he's not in the class, there are guys that right now they wouldn't take. That they would say, yeah, we'll take you now. We have room. Just like with Hero Canoe on the defensive line. When Darren Agu was in the class, they didn't have room for Hero. They wanted Anthony Lucas. That's who they wanted, you know. Well, now that Agu's not in the class, now you have room for Anthony Lucas and Hero. Same thing a receiver. They can go try to flip somebody that maybe they didn't take earlier.
Yeah, if they know now, it's better now than to find out, you know, on the eve of early signing day or whatever. You know what I mean? So I would put his feet to the fire a little bit. I mean, just like, look, if you wanted to go someplace else, peace be with you. But
right.
Like, we need to know so that.
Right. That's great. That's funny.
Yeah, but if you're not,
I don't know why I thought that was so funny. I'm sorry. Like gave him his blessing on the way out the door.
That's right. Peace be with you. Get out of here.
Oh man.
Yeah. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. I mean, it's like we need to know so that we can move on with what we want to do. Like it's not fair to be riding the fence on this, and I don't blame him. I really don't.
Yeah, I'd be frustrated. And again, this is our opinion. This isn't what
Vincent Bryan talking.
Yeah. Right. So I personally would say I would not just kick him to the curb. I mean, I kind of would.
Yeah.
I'd say, look, man, you know, what's going on, and how he responded would determine whether I truly would kick him.
Right. Absolutely. That's how you and I would respond if you actually picked me for your coaching staff, which you didn't on the board. I'm just saying.
I mean, you know, I need some analysts that can, you know, break down the film in the back room. You're just too valuable there.
Maybe it could be a GA.
Yeah. Well, hey, if I was the head coach of Notre Dame in this fake scenario, somebody'd have to run Irish breakdown.
Fair enough.
You know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, I'd give you all the scoop.
Give me the scoop. Yeah.
You get all the firsthand access. We're joking about that. So what that refers to is
this is a joke.
Someone on the message board asked me, if you were the head coach, what offense, defense would you want to run, and what would be your ideal staff? So it's not like I'm actually saying I'm because you know some people are like, oh, you know, it was more about them just trying to get an idea of me, of who the coaches are that I like around the country, what kind of systems I run. So it was kind of fun. It was the Fighting Driscolls was the name of the team. That was even the best part. Yeah.
And it was at Driscoll University. So
yeah. We have to change one of those two things. So yeah.
Anyway,
Andy Arena, chill out. We'll get to that part. We haven't got to that part yet. So just take a deep breath and we'll get there. All right. So anyway, somebody at the bottom of the chat is panicking a little bit, so just we'll get there. Don't worry about it. We'll get there. We'll address that topic. So
all right. John says, I'm not sure about the O-line as a whole, but there should be a guard center mauling combo. I assume he means Kane Madden and Jarrett Patterson. Whether it be Zeke Correll or whoever else. I mean, I think they've got a chance to be good inside. I just I still have some question marks, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that on Wednesday. I don't mind talking about it, John. I think it's a great question. I just kind of want to save it for Wednesday because I think we're going to definitely address that when we talk about the topic as a whole on Wednesday. Brandon says, is Nana playing Viper behind Foskey this year, or is he playing the strong side?
Nana is a big end. So the big end right now is you've got Myron Tungavaloa at big end. You've got Justin Adamule at big end. You've got Nana at big end. And then at Viper, you have Foskey at Viper. You got Jordan Patelho right now at Viper. You have Osita Ekwonu at Viper. And then also Justin Adamule has been doing some cross training. So he's the guy that could fill in at that other spot. Part of that is because Nana's had a really good offseason. So now there's a little bit more confidence in the next level at big end. Plus you have Alexander Ahrensberger, who's had a good offseason. So there's a little bit more confidence that if Justin's removed from the big end rotation, they're gonna be a lot better off than if Foskey is removed from the Viper or Patelho is moved from the Viper because the lack of depth beyond that top group. And we'll get into the Patelho stuff here in a little bit. But yeah, I think that's why Justin Ademilola is cross-training, because if the need arises for him to be a Viper, they want to be prepared for that, which he's played in the past, so it wouldn't be new for him. But you're only doing that. Part of the reason you're doing that is because you do have confidence that if you take him out of the 2 deep there, you have pretty good options behind him that can step up and play. And I think you'd probably see a combination of Nana and Alexander Ahrensberger, not just Nana, if that situation arose.
We got a lot of going back and forth about people having to deal with Michigan and Ohio State fans, which there's some pretty funny anecdotes in there. Jonathan, I will put yours up because I hear this all the time. He says, the minute I mention I'm a huge Notre Dame fan to anyone, the immediate response is join a conference. It's exhausting dealing with some of these people. Agreed. Hopefully we've given you some ammo if you've been paying attention to the stuff that we've been doing over the past few weeks. Hopefully we've given you some ammo, man. That's the point. Jeff, you want to try Nantkis?
I would imagine so, yeah.
All right, cool.
I imagine one of those ends is silent.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. Jeff says, love this time of day. So do I, Jeff. Thank you for checking in. Really appreciate that. Han Solo says, not really a question. Just want to say I'm glad Kirk Herbstreit said what he said about college football and what the Texas-Oklahoma crap is doing to the sport.
So can I speak on this, Vince?
Yeah.
You all know I'm very hard on Kirk Herbstreit. I used to love Kirk Herbstreit. I thought he was a really good analyst because he used to actually just talk football. And he avoided the groupthink. He avoided the spin. He avoided the SEC homerism. If anything, he kind of pushed back against it. He has the last couple of years, I kind of felt like he sold out a little bit. But he said something the other day that I thought was great because he said, look, I'm someone who believes that part of what makes football great is the tradition of the game. Now, that doesn't mean we have to still wear leather helmets. It doesn't mean that you have to have a grass field or you can't have a scoreboard. That's not the traditions he's talking about. It's traditions of the geographical nature of conferences, the traditional rivalries, the leagues that you've been in. And that is just being thrown out the window now because of money. And that's what he called it. I was shocked that someone at ESPN had the stones to say that because who are the people throwing around the money that's ruining all this?
Who's driving the bus? Yeah, right, exactly.
SEC's not looking to add Texas, Oklahoma for more money if ESPN's not the one giving them that money. Right. So it was fascinating to hear him say that, but he's absolutely right. It's not just that; it's a lot of things. His line in the sand was this conference expansion. Mine was, it's a combination of like 10 things, but it was good to hear him say that because this Texas OU thing, Texas is just I've never disliked Texas. I've never liked Texas. I've just been kind of indifferent to Texas. I now hate Texas because your greed. It could potentially be the beginning of the end of the game as we know it. And I have always been, they're going to form a super conference of 30-some teams, and they're going to have and I'm like, so what you're saying is you want college football to become the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be 30 teams with a bunch of different divisions. And that's exactly
I had a friend of mine who, great guy, I love the guy, but he was explaining to me how he thinks it should go. And I said, okay. He said it should be super conferences. There'd be 30-some teams. He's like, you'd have the playoff. He goes, then you'd reseed, after the first round and all this other kind of stuff. And I said, so you just want college football? He goes, no, I don't want it to be like the NFL. And then he started explaining. I'm like, dude, what's the difference between that and the NFL? That's the NFL. We already have the NFL.
Right.
And the thing that bothers me is the thing that makes college football great. It is the greatest regular season in sports. And all these things that they're doing, expanding the playoff, the way that they're doing it, I'm not opposed to expanding opportunities for more teams to have a shot to win a championship. I just don't think a 12-team playoff is the way to go, right? But then these smaller conferences and 4 super conferences and all that other kind of stuff, and to me, that's not good for the game. It's just not. I don't like it, and I'm just glad to hear someone that's got a voice.
Yeah.
Pushing back on it.
He's got a voice.
Late. It's a little late,
right?
But better now than never.
By everybody, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Nicholas Grosh says, sorry for the length, but Ian Book may be harder to replace than we all think. His leadership and gutsy play may not be immediately present in his replacements.
So this is the thing that we were talking about, that I was saying there was a question about it. And I respect that point of view. I do. I respect Notre Dame fans that appreciate Ian Book's how he's handled himself since replacing Brandon Wimbush and stepping in the lineup. I thought he showed graciousness to Brandon Wimbush. I thought he played well that year. I thought he had a very solid career at Notre Dame. I think he regressed, and there's some parts of his game that I don't like. But I think what a lot of people don't realize, and I've heard this from a lot of NFL scouts, I've heard this from a lot of college coaches, is this isn't just Brian Driscoll's opinion. This is a pretty well-held position that there were a lot of opportunities the last 2 years that a lot of those times when Ian Book was running around scrambling, the defense was like, whew, thank goodness.
Because he
didn't see this. Or he didn't see Cole Kmet running down the middle of the field wide open, or he didn't see Chase Claypool with 2 steps on that guy on a post route, things like that, where, hey, I'll let you run and scramble for 15 yards if you're not banging that post route to Javon McKinley for a touchdown. Or, you know what I mean? And so to me, I felt like Ian Book, the offense never quite, especially like the first year, I thought if he could have built on that first year, then we're having a different conversation. I mean, he was getting the ball out quick and he was making, I mean, the kid's worst game in his first 6 starts was like a 71.4 completion percentage.
That's great.
I mean, it was insane. Some of the numbers he put up that first year. I mean, he was averaging over 300 yards passing per game in his starts. Now, again, he went 3 for 3 with for 12 yards against Vanderbilt, right? Because he came in as a red zone guy. Dragged down his overall team, his per game numbers. He played against Michigan, but didn't throw a pass. So there's some things like that dragged down his numbers. I'm just talking about when games he started.
Yeah.
He averaged over 300 yards a game going into the postseason. He ended up with the bad performance against Clemson where he threw for, 150 yards, Vince, in that game? I'm looking it up now. He threw for 160. He still averaged 290.6 yards per game that year.
Right.
And you look at that and you say, boy, that's really impressive. But, in 2018, in his first 5 starts, he completed at least 71.4% of his passes. If you go back at his final 2 seasons at Notre Dame, I'm looking at 2019 and 2020, he only completed 70% of his passes in 4 games.
Total.
In
like 24 games.
In 25 games.
25.
He had a 70% completion percentage against 5 games. He had an 80% completion percentage against Bowling Green. He had a 70% completion percentage against Navy, 71.4 against Iowa State. Then this past year, he had 74.1 against BC and then 71.4 against Clemson. But that 71.4 was with a very low quarterback rating and only 7.8 yards per attempt because it was just a bunch of checkdowns. And because he went 20 of 28 for 219 yards. And then he had some yards padded on at the end. I mean, if you go look at his numbers in the fourth quarter when they went down, he completed at one point, I think 4 or 5 balls in a row. So that's it, 5 times in 2 years, in 25 games. Whereas he did that each of his first 5 starts. And if you really want to look at it, if you look at after his first 5 starts, he played 29 games. So he had 5 games of 70 plus in his first 5 starts. In his next, to be 30 starts, 29 starts, he did that 5 times total. So clearly he wasn't playing at the same level. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but he didn't improve as a passer. In fact, I think he regressed in a lot of ways. And part of that was coaching because they were asking more of him, which I think shouldn't have been, especially in 2019. I think there was more asked of him than should have been.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's why.
Right. Well, I mean, you have to adjust because teams got the book on in a little bit. No pun intended, but you have to.
Still good.
It's a different type of conversation, but so I don't think that's there. But I also think. Talk about his leadership and gutsy play. Sometimes I didn't want to see his gutsy play because I wanted to just throw the ball to the open receiver.
Right.
Like you're going to impact the defense more overall if they know you're going to do that.
Right.
Then your running becomes more effective because you don't have to run around crazy all the time. Flipping passes and stuff like that works against North Carolina. That doesn't work against Clemson. That doesn't work against Alabama. But the other part is you're talking about leadership and his production. With all due respect, let's not forget that they're not replacing him with a redshirt freshman that's never started a game before.
Exactly.
They're replacing him with a guy that has also won 10 games in the season, and I would argue that guy did not have the talent around him other than one position, running back, did not have the talent around him that what Notre Dame he's going to have at Notre Dame. And that's Jack Coan, who went 10-2 as a starter in the regular season, led his team to the Big Ten championship, led Ohio State at halftime, and went to the Rose Bowl and lost by a point to an Oregon team that finished 5th in the country and had a quarterback who the next year became the NFL Rookie of the Year. So, again, I would be more concerned about – okay, so put it like this, to Nicholas's point. If Drew Pine was the starting quarterback going into 2020, I'd be a little bit more concerned about the loss of Ian Book because of the experience, the leadership, and those kind of things. But even Tommy Rees explained, like, Drew Pine is far more advanced as a leader than Ian Book was at the same age because Drew is so much more vocal and those type of things. And so, but I don't think he would be able to replicate the playmaking ability that Ian Book brought to the table. And he is a young guy.
Sure.
But if we're looking at Jack Coan being the starter, with all due respect, and I could be wrong, Nicholas, and we could have this conversation at the end of the year, and you may say, "Ha I told you so." But I actually think they're going to be better at quarterback this year than they were last year. That's going to be one of my bold predictions when we get to that point in time. And I don't even know how bold that really is.
I was going to say that's not very bold, at least in it here.
Well, it's in this, but of course, this is sort of, we're preaching to the choir kind of thing, you and I to each other. I mean, right. I think it'd probably be a little bit more bold
out in the
by some of the perception of Ian Book.
Sure.
But if I said that to NFL scouts I know or draft scouts that I know, people like that, if I said to them, like, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, right. Way to be bold.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. OC Irish fan says, Coach D, seems like a bold prediction on the running backs, especially with an untested offensive line. What are your thoughts? Love the Notre Dame.
This is a good question, Vince.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Do you have an opinion on this?
Well, I do. And look, is the offensive line untested? Yeah, for the most part, it is. But at the same time, you've got returning starts from Lugg. You've got Jarrett Patterson, who could potentially be the best center in the country when it's all said and done. You've got Zeke Correll, who could potentially start at left guard.
Who started in the Rose Bowl, who
That's
started at North Carolina last year,
He's got starts under his belt. And then you've got Kane Madden, who everybody's super high on, and because he was a second-team All-American. So, I mean,
I'm picking up the sarcasm of your comment, but to his point, the one thing we can agree on about Kane Madden, he's not untested.
Right. He's got starts under his belt as well.
And so almost 3 years worth.
The only untested person that doesn't have a collegiate start under their belt is Blake Fisher.
A guy that everyone thinks is going to be a future top 10 NFL draft pick.
Exactly. Right. So now that's part of it. That's number one.
Right. That's the spin in the positive direction.
Correct. Right. The other part for me personally is that I'm very confident in the running back position because of what they're going to do in the pass game as well.
We think.
Exactly. What we project to happen in the pass game, I expect them to be dynamic in that as well. And that has nothing to do with the offensive line. Mm-hmm. So now, do we have questions about the offensive line? Yeah, tune in on Wednesday because we will talk about that. But I still think that these running backs are going to be special. The room is going to be special.
I'm going to look at it this way. And again, this is a really good question, but here's why I still have I don't think it's a bold prediction. I think it's going to be very, very good. And this isn't just two Notre Dame fans talking. I mean, there's preseason magazines that have the Notre Dame running back group 4 or 5, so we're not alone as like this Notre Dame fans in a vacuum talking to other Notre Dame fans, pumping up everything about their team is great. There's outsiders that view this running back group as the same way. I mean, so, there's a question about that in there too, or a comment about that in there too. Have you passed that one yet, Vince, about Kyron Williams being the number?
Right here. Yeah. Sporting News top 40 players has Kyron Williams as the number 26 overall player in the country, regardless of position. It's nice to know some of these writers out there actually watch football.
And that's Bill Bender, right? By the way. And Bill's been on our podcast before. Bill's a really good football guy, very objective. Actually, and this is a crazy thing. He actually watches games. Right. That's a crazy thought. Woo. But Bill's super high on Kyron. He ranked him 26, but he also Sporting News had Kyron as a second-team All-American last year. So they're very high on him. So no question about it. But back to the question from OC Irish is part of the expectation is, again, I don't think Notre Dame. Can you pull up the other OC Irish question? Yeah,
for sure.
Part of the expectation too, OC, is that we don't anticipate Notre Dame running the same offense they had last year. Last year, the offense was very offensive line driven, and they admitted that. Like, we were building around the offensive line. Tommy Rees said in the interview with me that, like, look, we can't build around the offensive line the way we did last year. He knows that. He knows they can't come out and go 12, 13 personnel all day and just run it down people's throat if they want to compete for a championship. He understands, and he said it. We got to get the ball in the perimeter. So this isn't just Vince and I sitting here pie in the sky. Well, this is what we would do if we were offensive coordinator. We're reacting to what Tommy Rees has said. And what we've seen in practices and what we saw in the Blue Gold game, right? And so I think that takes some of the pressure off the offensive line. If you're going to go 12, 13 personnel all day, and you're going to have 8, 9 guys in the box all day, then the run game is going to struggle. But to Vince's point, that's not the only reason that we're optimistic about this group of running backs. There's also some things in the pass game. But the offensive line does have to play well.
But
sure. I don't think that they're going to ask the offensive line to be as again, this is what we talk about. What's the focal point of your team? Building around your running backs it could look very different than building around your offensive line. Now, it could sometimes you're going to do the same thing with both of them because of what they do. But last year, they built around the offensive line, and it was independent of what happened at running back. Now, as you realize Kyron's pretty good, Christopher Tyree's pretty good, then you started to do some more things. But it was built around the offensive line, whereas this year it's going to be more running back centered, which means it's not always dependent upon the offensive line dominating. It means more perimeter stuff, more read stuff, RPOs to protect you, getting the backs involved in the pass game, things like that is going to be more of what it's going to look like. You got another question, Vince?
Always. John Rich says, how do you think the decommitment of cornerback Jaheim Singletary from, I assume that's OSU, will affect the decision of Xavier Nwankpa? The Buckeye pressure should get even more intense. Which
I don't think it's going to impact it that way.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of thoughts that, that's going to open up a spot. No, Jaheim Singletary is a corner. Xavier Nwankpa was being recruited to play safety.
Right.
It doesn't really impact it. There was room for Xavier Nwankpa. Having Jaheim Singletary didn't impact whether or not they had room for Xavier Nwankpa. That was more of a Zion Branch. If he joins, what would the deal be then? But they've said all along. If anything, I think this helps Notre Dame. Because part of the selling point of Ohio State is, again, what we always say, dogs want to play with dogs, right? Studs want to play with studs. Whatever expression you want to use, savages want to play with savages, right? Isn't that the one they used a few years ago? Whatever expression you want to use, great players want to be surrounded by other great players. Well, right now, that Ohio State secondary took a bit of a hit because you just lost your best player from that group. 5-star corner, number 5, top 5 player in the country kind of guy. And, Terrence Brooks is ranked kind of high, and Kai Stokes is ranked somewhat-ish, top 250 kind of guy. Jair Brown's ranked as a top 150 kind of guy, but you just lost your stud. Now, all of a sudden, that Notre Dame secondary is looking like they can compete with them a little bit. So if anything, I think this helps Notre Dame. I don't think it's going to ultimately determine his decision one way or the other, but I think it's just one little small check, and what's going to have to be a long checklist of things from Notre Dame is, and look, who has the momentum recruiting against each other right now? Notre Dame's got a lot more momentum going on defense than Ohio State does. Ohio State's losing guys. Notre Dame's adding guys. Notre Dame just beat them for Brendan Verne. I mean, there's a lot of things going in Notre Dame's favor that say, hey, look, here's the – and let's not forget, too, at the end of the day, a lot of Ohio State people thought he was going to commit to them in June, Xavier Nwankpa.
Yep.
It's now August, and he's not anywhere close to making a decision. That's because of Notre Dame. And the fact that Notre Dame gave him a lot to think about. So, as I've said before, the longer this goes out, the better it is for Notre Dame. But if anything, John, I think this could help Notre Dame. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be a needle mover one way or the other.
All right. Mike Gardner says, I was reading there is some news surrounding Jordan Botelho. Is there anything that I should be worried about?
So this stuff started this weekend. It kind of took off. It was kind of funny, Vince. It kind of ticked me off at first, but then I just kind of laughed and was like,
right.
You just kind of think about this because we haven't had a message board for 6 months, and I just forgot about the fact that people can literally take me not saying anything as turning it into I'm saying something.
Right.
So we put it. We
fun of having a message board,
and it wasn't on our board. I mean, our board handled it rationally and calmly. It was people that took it from our board and then went and ran and turned it into something that it wasn't.
Right.
So I did an update on Friday, an intel piece. So the data intel I've gathered from multiple sources about different players. I didn't talk about Jordan Patelho. I didn't talk about Alexander Ahrensberger. I didn't talk about Osita Ekwonu, and I don't think I talked about Howard Cross other than mentioning Howard Cross being part of the nose tackle rotation, but it wasn't intel on Howard Cross.
Sure.
I also came up with an intel piece the next day on the linebackers and safeties, and I didn't talk about Kyle Hamilton. I didn't talk about Drew White. I didn't talk about Bo Bauer. I didn't talk about Paul Mawala. I didn't talk about Isaiah Pryor. Right? So last I checked, they're not all transferring or getting kicked out of school or whatever else. And so then somebody asked, what are your thoughts on Jordan Patelho? And I said, look, I'm not going to comment on the things I'm hearing about Jordan Patelho right now. I'm still not going to comment on things I've heard about Jordan Patelho because you hear all types of things over the summer. And the reality is nothing that I've heard has been confirmed by anyone at Notre Dame.
Right. Exactly.
And if I could tell you some of the things we heard there, remember it was 2018, Vince? When there was the rumor circulating through the media that Ian Book was about to be suspended for academics. Remember that?
I remember that.
That was a real thing. People were actually calling me, asking me about that. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's the most, but then you do your due diligence, you make your calls, and you realize like that's just a thing. And it was coming from sources. Right?
Exactly.
Not from us, but other people were saying that. And I mean, I could tell you so-and-so's out for the year with a knee injury. He heard it in practice on Tuesday. And I'd had like good sources, people that have been right more often than not, told me something. There was a lineman recently. Kid never missed a game. But if I just would have gone and ran with that, I'd have said, "Oh, this guy got hurt in practice on Tuesday. He's out." And then the kid shows up on Saturday. How's that make me look? I made that mistake once in my career, where I saw something, reported it, and I didn't think about it. And it was in 2014. When Kavari Russell was suspended. And I was walking into to the press conference, and I could see through one of the areas, and I saw a player that looked like Kavari wearing his jersey number. And so I said, hey, I think I just saw Kavari Russell at practice. Again, he was suspended for that, you remember? Mm-hmm. You know what it was? It was a scout team guy. The other team starting cornerback was wearing Kavari's number. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So that's what
very
happens.
Common,
right?
That you wear the number of the opposing. When you're on the scout team.
Because it was like kind of early in the season.
Sure.
And so you learn right then, like again, young, not really a journalist, new into the business, and you make that mistake, and you look pretty bad. You have to have some verification, and then also when I do hear things and I'm told that hey, this is what's going on, but it's not set in stone yet. You definitely don't want to go and run with it because if there's nothing there. Right. Then what's the point of all this?
Exactly.
Right. So from what I'm told, from talking to sources at Notre Dame, as of right now, there's no intention of anyone going to be suspended. That's what they told us today. So people went and turned this into on other message boards. Like I said on our board, a couple of people panicked and said, hey, look, I said what I said. I have no comment right now. Just like I don't have comment about so-and-so and so-and-so. And our board chilled. Okay, I got you. Let's go. Let's talk about like the 47 other updates that I actually gave. Then on another, I was sending people are like send me screenshots. Like one guy said Driscoll said he's out with academics. Never said that. Definitely never said that. Especially since what I heard has nothing to do with academics.
Right.
He got in a fight. He's suspended for the year. Something I also never said, and like just all these different things. And it's like so now it's like well Driscoll saying something going. I never said anything about Jordan Patelho. Like that turned into this, and that's the unfortunate thing. And that's why I've asked if we say something on a message board, keep it on our message board because. I can't go to 24/7's board and say, hey, that's wrong information, right? This is Driscoll of another site. That's bad information. I would never do that, just like they're not going to come to my site and do the same thing if somebody says Tom Loy. Now, what Tom or Tim would do, they'd call, hey, just so you know, that's not what I said. And I did some of that. I talked to some people at some other place. Hey, look, what's being reported on your board that I said, I never said. Just so you know, just so you understand.
Right.
But I mean, I can't control that. And somebody was like, well, maybe you shouldn't have said that. I can't control what other people say about something I literally didn't say.
Right.
It's
amazing. Some wild imaginations out there.
Is there news about Jordan Patelho? As of right now, I have nothing to report. I talked to Notre Dame. He's not suspended. No one else is suspended. There's no anticipation as of today that somebody is not going to be there.
You can only say what Notre Dame tells you. And that's what you're being told. I mean, not to put words in your mouth.
No, that's what I'm being told.
That's happened enough. But yeah.
I know, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I got to deal with this from other people. I can't deal with this from you. No, but I mean, look, that's what's going on. Now,
if Notre Dame says something, that's what we,
Now, am I going to sit there and play dumb and act like there aren't some things I'm hearing about Jordan Battelle? Yeah, there are. But again, the reason I haven't reported on it or dropped a bigger hint about it is because if I went and ran with everything that I was told by people close to the program, you couldn't believe some of the crazy stuff that we'd have put out over the years that turned out to not be accurate.
Right.
And that's the important thing.
Exactly.
And that's why I don't have a comment. Because the other thing is the reason I didn't comment about him is because nobody's told me about anything he's done this summer working out wise. I have no news about what he's done this summer working out wise. None. So what am I going to do? So then do I not put any updates because I'm afraid that somebody's going to take it and turn it into some gossip and rumor? I can't control what other people do. But what I'm going to do for my customers and our customers, Vince, is we're going to give you all the intel that we have. And all the intel that we can, in good conscience, put out there.
Correct, and that's the key.
And the other thing is, I had some guy say, like, some guy was losing his mind on another site, and I felt bad for the other site. Like, thank God our board's not like that. Somebody, we're entitled to know everything that you know. No, you're not.
No,
no, you're not, because some things are not our business to put out there.
Exactly.
And here's nothing. Good luck trying to ever get a scoop again if you burn sources.
And that's another really important thing. Yeah.
If a Notre Dame coach tells me, hey, so-and-so is going to commit in 2 weeks, and I go out there and drop it, guess what's never going to happen on my side again? Information from that coach or that recruit.
Yeah.
Because then that recruit's going to go tell every other recruit, hey, that freaking guy, Brian Driscoll, man, he screwed me over. Don't ever talk to that guy. Then what? Oh, I got my 5 minutes of fame, but I'm never going to have another piece of information.
What was it worth?
Yeah, because it's not when we knew Jalen Steele was going to commit for weeks. Literally took him 2 weeks to get his video done, like almost 3 weeks to get his commit video done, which, as we saw, was a pretty awesome commit video, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, that's not my place to tell. I mean, I dropped as many hints as I can without just completely taking the kid's moment because it kept getting asked about. But like, that's not my. I was told the day that Benjamin Morrison committed, I literally talked with somebody 5 minutes after that happened. A little bit longer than that, but it's like right after it happened, and they told me, "Say don't say anything why? Because then it doesn't mean as much when he goes out and does it."
Exactly.
Right.
Let this get our place.
And again, with these things, if I knew for a fact that this was happening, and Notre Dame was saying, "Hey, we're not commenting on that right now," I'd say something. That's happened before. But, hey, look, I have it on good authority. And if they say, hey, look, we're just not going to comment on that, well, just so you know, I'm running with this. And I've had before, like this happened with Mike Birch, the former SID. I said, look, I'm going to run with this. He goes, Brian, you can run with it, but I'm just telling you because I can't comment on it, but you don't want to do that. That was his way of saying, I can't comment on it, but you're going to look like an idiot if you do that. Right? There's ways that they can let you know. But right now, it's like, like, look, there's nothing to report. You can report whatever you want, but
they're not saying no comment at the moment.
Right. They're saying, as of right now, no one is suspended. We don't anticipate anyone being suspended. Could that change? I guess. But I mean, as of right now, that's where they're at. So, but I want to make sure that the people that watch this show know that the rumors going around about how I said something about Jordan Battelle is flat out false. And anyone saying otherwise is either mistaken, was given bad information, or is being dishonest. Those are really the only three options. And if you want to know what I said, here's a great thing you can do. See that link down there? boards.irishbreakdown.com. Sign up, because then you can see it for yourself, or you can ask me there.
Yeah.
And then we can all handle it like adults, which is the most fun anyway.
Exactly. Jeff jumping back in, he says, seems like every time we have a decommitment, there's a reason why on Notre Dame's side, and we have somebody waiting in the wings. That's called good recruiting. Just because you haven't necessarily told a guy that he's a take, you're still recruiting him, and I think that's really important. And that I assume he's talking about maybe the Hero Canoe situation when Darren Agu decommitted and then they offered, and I mean,
I wouldn't say that's waiting in the wings though, because they still have to get him.
Well, absolutely,
it's going to be tough to beat, but
for sure.
That's also, Vince, to your point, why I've said so often that you have to recruit your entire board,
right? Because
then when things like this happen, you haven't just stopped recruiting kids. Or you don't have anyone to turn to, and it can make it challenging. But but that's like you said, Vince. That's good recruiting.
OC Irish fan says, Vince, just like the running backs being dependent on the O-line, the receivers will be dependent on the accuracy of our quarterback and willingness to pull the trigger. Could not agree more.
Another reason why I'm high on Jack Cohn.
Yes, exactly.
That's not an issue for Jack Cohn. He has his flaws as a player, just like Ian Book had his flaws.
Sure.
But accuracy, ball placement, and willingness to pull the trigger are absolutely not concerns for Jack Cohn.
Right. Exactly. Spartan B88 says, how much weight do college coaches put in a given high school coach's assessment of a recruit from both your perspectives? I'll lead off on this one, Brian. What I learned while coaching high school, if you always be honest with college coaches, number one, okay? Don't overinflate what a guy is, and don't throw shade on a kid. And I don't know why anybody would
doesn't
do that,
mean you can't be favorable, give a positive opinion of your kid. That's not what you're saying, right? But
that's not what I'm saying at all. But don't be dishonest in a positive way about a kid, because look, they're going to watch the film and they're going to realize that they wasted their time. And so what I found out,
or they're going to get the transcript and realize that what you told them was the kid's GPA was not what it was, and they just wasted a month of recruiting the kid.
Exactly. So here's what I found out: the more honest you are with coaches, right, the more they're going to come to you with questions. So I played for a coach who was like brutally honest. I mean, he was honest about his own guys who got scholarships, went to college, the whole thing, D1. But he was also honest about guys that he played against, right? Or that he coached against, I should say. Mm-hmm. And so college coaches would go to him and be like, hey, who are the guys we should be looking at in your conference? You know what I mean? That kind of, they would start with him and then kind of branch out to some other people. That's what being honest gets for you.
Those are the coaches that I valued the most. Now,
yes,
it's more so at the levels I coached at than Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's kind of picking and choosing. But like when I coached at like the 1AA Division III levels, because you're recruiting more of a smaller region, you're recruiting conferences. I mean, you may get 7-8 kids from one conference. Sure. You to have those kind of coaches, it's incredibly valuable. But even at the bigger scale, if you have a coach that's honest with you and through your relationship with him, you will know that he has a pretty good idea of football, right? Because the guy could be honest and an idiot.
Absolutely. Yeah, right. Of course.
I mean, there's that. And you say, look, good guy, and he's going to tell me about the kids' grades and stuff, but he just doesn't know football. He doesn't know what we're looking for. He's a high, whatever. But you put some weight on that. But to me, I've always found, and for me as a coach, I don't need you to tell me how good the kid is. I have eyes. I have film. I can watch film. I can figure that out. What I want you to tell me is, what's the kid like on a Wednesday practice in the middle of the season? What kind of leader is he?
Yep.
Is he a quiet leader? Is he a vocal leader? Is he not a leader at all? Is he a lead by example guy? What kind of student is he? I mean, I would, if it was, especially if it was a kid that we really liked, or whether it was a kid we really liked or a kid we were uncertain of, there'd be times I'd talk to guidance counselors. Kind of teachers. You talk to teachers, principals. And there's a couple times where I would have a custodian would stop me. Hey, you looking at so and so? Like, yeah. Hey, man, great kid. He every time he sees us, he says hi, and it makes us feel like you love hearing stuff like that.
Yep.
Because at least from a culture and a character standpoint, he's going to fit in. Now I got to figure out the football part, but at least from that part, he's going to fit in. Whereas, the football part's good, but this kid's a prick who treats people disrespectful. He's a bad teammate, unreliable. Not sure if he's going to go to class every day. Okay, well, the football piece, I'm not going to bring you in because I'm not going to waste my time coaching you up knowing that you may not be here but a couple weeks because you're going to act like an idiot and get in trouble, or you're not going to fit the culture of what we're trying to build here. That's the stuff you really want to get a coach's honesty from. And I'll tell you an example. There was a 5-star recruit a couple years ago from a school in a region that's very favorable to Notre Dame. The kid had expressed interest in Notre Dame. And I talked to a really trusted source, and I said, hey, why aren't you guys recruiting this kid? Because you watch the film and you're like, I didn't think the kid was as good as they made him out to be. I thought he's more of a top 50 guy than a top 10 guy. I said, why aren't you recruiting this guy? It's like, check, goes to a Catholic school. He's from this region and this, that, and the other. And they were like, high school coach said he gave us a really bad review of the kid. So they dropped him. Well, the kid goes to an SEC school. Great pickup. Highly ranked player, didn't make it a year. Then didn't make it a year at the school he went to, right? And it's like, well, see, that's why Notre Dame stopped recruiting him. So the next time you go back to that school and the coach says, hey, this is a kid you want, coach.
Right.
Great kid. You know that you're getting an honest opinion from him. So there's going to be a much greater level of trust at that high school moving forward. And Notre Dame has recruited that high school since then, when you have a coach that you know is going to give you an honest opinion. Now, some schools, I'm sure that coach said the same thing to the SEC school to sign the kid. They just said, we don't care. He's really good. Right. We don't care. Right. Where Notre Dame said, yeah, we care more about that. And, that's what happened. So the kid didn't even last a year, I don't believe. So those are the coaches. That's what you want to be. And my advice to high school coach would always be, you always want to put your kid in a good light unless he's just a bad kid, but you also need to be honest.
Yep.
And if your kid has no weaknesses or flaws, then the coach is going to dismiss what you tell him. Because no kid's perfect.
Right.
Hey, look, he's a really good kid, this, that, and the other. He struggles in math. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you're a school that has a lot of requirements, he struggles in math. You're going to have to work him on that. Even if it's just something like that, always be honest with coaches. Because otherwise, it's going to hurt your next group of kids that comes down the road. Because they're just not going to call you anymore. They're going to call some local high school coach that plays against your kid, and that may not be what you want to have happen.
Yep. Tommy Guns. So on Friday, you guys talked about Culver Academy. I'm asking for your opinions on the other Culvers. We just had one open up near me. You got the cup. What I was going to say was you and I may have had a business lunch at Culver's.
Yeah.
And I love Culver's. It is so good.
It's a little on the, you can call it greasy or juicy side. It's a little expensive. My wife went and I had Culver's today. We both got a burger and fries and a drink, and it was over $20.
Right. Exactly. Which is why me and my 5 children and my wife
don't eat
rarely hit
That's
Culver's.
Why the last time Vince was at Culver's was on my dime.
It's a fact.
So, it's all good. But it's good.
Yeah,
and my wife, I'm not really an ice cream guy. I'm definitely, but my wife loves their ice cream.
Ice cream is good.
She's an ice cream connoisseur, and she really likes their ice cream. It's supposedly it's like a more natural. It's like a a custard kind of thing, whatever.
Yeah, it's custard. It's custard.
It's not like Dairy Queen. It's like it's a better ice cream than that.
It's good.
Yeah,
the place is great.
They have pretzel bites. Yeah, those are. Have you had those, Vince? Those are really good.
My kids love those. Really yeah, so they also work really well with schools. I will say that because they give out free kids meals to the schools, and the schools hand them out for different things. So when we accumulate
a bucket program, remember that back in the day?
It's very similar. It's very, very similar, but not as cool. Awesome. Because you don't get a button with the star on it, but that's a different conversation. But when
I read a lot of books back then.
Yeah, exactly. But when we accumulate a lot of those certificates, that's when we go to Culver's because we're eating on certificates. But anyway,
I'd be doing the same thing if I had 5 kids. Like I said, we just both got a meal. That's we didn't get extras. We just both got a meal.
It's $20. Yeah,
$20. Yeah, but it's worth it. And I'll say the one over by where we live too. Great customer service.
Oh, there you go.
Great. And it's so hard to get that nowadays, but
you are not kidding.
They messed up my grandmother's. We had my grandma in town. We got their fish meal. My grandma, she's 89. She likes, and she had just finally gotten through COVID and all that stuff. She was coming to visit us and everything. And so I got her the fish meal and she really liked it. But when we took it the first time, it was cold. Well, I live, Vince, we live like a mile and a half away from the Culver's. It should not be cold.
Right.
And so I took it back and they not only they remade the whole thing, and then my wife wanted ice cream, so I ordered ice cream for my grandmother, and they comped it, and I didn't ask them to, they just did it. It's hey, look, people screw up.
They're really good people.
But you make up for it and deal with it. So really good customer service. But the food, I get the mushroom and Swiss. That's what I get.
And I go, what I get every time.
I am mad. They did have pretzel buns, but now they're out of pretzel buns. But Tommy, if the one where you live has pretzel buns, get them with pretzel buns. It's really good.
So there you go. Culver's review.
That's our non-Notre Dame football related topic of the day. Let's not turn this into when we had World War II the other day. Let's try to get back on topic after this.
Yeah, we lost a few viewers after that.
I had some, but it's all good though. But I had somebody email me and asking for book suggestions and stuff like that. So it's pretty awesome.
See, exactly. Let's see here. D-Rock agrees with us about Culver's. Just going to put that. Andrew Rhodes says QB as a strength makes sense to me. Murphy.
Andrews agrees with us. It's a smart man.
Very smart. Matt Murphy says, what game do you consider a trap game on the schedule this year? You and I kind of talked about Virginia Tech.
Yeah, that's one for me. And here's a couple reasons why. Number one, I think the whole Virginia Tech atmosphere is super overrated, having experienced that in 2018.
Right.
It's like the whole Sandman thing. That's a really cool thing on TV, but in person, it takes them 5 minutes to. They show them walking out of the locker room, and they start everybody starts getting, and it takes them 5 freaking minutes to finally get there and come out. I'm by that point in time, it's okay, A, Metallica is not that cool, and B, like it's like it took you 5 minutes. It's kind of anticlimactic, and all you do is like just jump around. It's like, with all due respect, the players running down the hill at Clemson is way cooler, like way cooler than that. But yeah, it's an overrated event. But just take that aside. It is a road game in the middle of the year,
sandwich in between two home games on either side.
Yes, you've got Cincinnati, Wisconsin, and Cincinnati.
Yeah,
right before it. You've got USC and North Carolina coming up right after it.
Right.
And I always worry about games like this because Virginia Tech's a team that Notre Dame should beat and should beat convincingly. But just like Clemson should have beat Pitt in 2016 and Syracuse in 2017, and Alabama should have beat, Auburn in 2019, and Alabama should have beat Ole Miss the 2 times that Ole Miss beat them, et cetera. Just like Ohio State should have beat Purdue and Ohio State should have beat Iowa. But those 2 losses that Ohio State had in 17 and 18 in conference to teams that they should have crushed were both on the road, and they were both kind of sandwiched around other big games. Like when they lost to when they lost to Iowa in 2017. I think it might have even been you that I said this to, Vince, but I looked at their schedule and I said, oh man, I feel really bad for who they play next week. And it was Michigan State.
I remember you saying that to me.
And I said, man, I feel terrible. In Michigan State, that was 2017. That was a good Michigan State team. Remember that? They won 10 games that year, and Ohio State beat them 48-3.
Yeah, it wasn't. That wasn't one of them.
And who did they play before Iowa? They played home against Penn State, who was a top 10 team that year.
Right.
So it was like Iowa's a good team, but not a great team. But it was on the road, and it was sandwiched between 2 huge home games.
Right.
Well, Penn State, then Iowa, then Michigan State, who at the time was ranked high. They were 15th going into that game. I think the only team they'd lost to at that point in time was Notre Dame. So those kind of games always make me nervous, Vince, because you kind of almost, if you get through Cincinnati and Wisconsin, you're almost kind of like, it's almost like
it's an exhale. It's an absolute exhale. Yeah.
You got through the tough one. Virginia Tech's not that good. And they're not, but they're good enough to knock you off if you don't, if you have one of those, we're not focused games. And that's why that game to me is the ultimate trap game. And I think the other one for me is later in the year at Virginia, because it's kind of like, they're another really well-coached, tough physical team that you've kind of got through the rough part of your schedule. If Notre Dame gets through that part of their schedule with 0 or 1 loss, it's kind of like, okay, we're good. Just don't screw it up. Don't lose to some crap team like Navy. Because after the USC game or after the North Carolina game, they will be now 8 games deep, right? So since Wisconsin, Cincy, Virginia Tech, USC, North Carolina, they'll have 4 games left. And those 4 games are against Navy, Georgia Tech, Stanford, and Virginia on the road. And that's one of those games where it's like kind of like, do you feel like you've made it? You've arrived if you're 0-1 loss, and then you just kind of think you're going to go into Virginia and beat them. That's another one. But the Virginia Tech game more than any of them is the one that scares me. Not scares me, but what makes me the most nervous from a trap game perspective. I hope that answers your question, Matt.
Jacob has a really good question. He says, if we can win with Drew Pine as much as we could win with Cone, why not start Pine then? I would think that he would develop into a better quarterback than Cone eventually, and his eligibility beyond this season.
I have 2 thoughts to that. Number one is, Jacob, I think it's a good question.
Yeah.
Two answers to that. Number one is, I think this probably revolves more around you and I have a very different opinion on Jack Cone. Like a very different opinion on Jack Cone. I think Jack Cone's a lot better than people think. The second part of that is because you're not worried about next year. Notre Dame, in my opinion, has a chance to compete for a title in 2021. And if you're making decisions to sort of sacrifice this year for the future, that's a mistake. You do that if you're in a rebuilding year. Notre Dame is not in a rebuilding year. They're in a reloading year, and that's where they should always be. So you go with the best guy. Now, if things were equal, would I maybe in this instance lean towards the guy that maybe is going to be here longer? Sure. But I don't think things are going to be equal. I think Jack Cone is a really good quarterback, and he's going to surprise a lot of people this year. I really do. Look, I'm kind of putting my reputation on the line a little bit by hammering this drum as loudly as I am. If Jack Cone goes out there and sucks, it's going to make me look bad. But that's what I do, right? I mean, that's what I have to do. I'm not going to be afraid to give my opinion because it may look bad. This is what I see, and it's based off film, studying the data. I mean, again, 69.6% completion percentage. Right. I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna give this data again, Vince. Okay. So in 2019, Jack Cone had a 69.6% completion percentage. Russell Wilson in 2011 had a 72.8% completion percentage. Russell Wilson's pretty good. Here's what the quarterbacks had from Wilson to Jack Cohn, starting quarterback. 58.8, 61.9. That's by the way, Joel Stave, who I believe is still an NFL quarterback. 53.4, 60.8, also Joel Stave. 58.6, 62.3, 59.5. Jack Cohn was 69.6. Russell Wilson was 72.8, which means Jack Cohn was significantly closer to Russell Wilson than any other quarterback was to Jack Cohn. His quarterback rating was higher than any quarterback between him and Russell Wilson. That's a span of what? 7 seasons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It's got to be more than 7.
7. Well, because 11 and 19, but it's total. So 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Okay.
And then Jack Cohn was the starter in 2019. So in 7 seasons including 3 seasons where the starter was a guy who's currently in the National Football League. I believe Joel Stabe's on the National Football League, isn't he? I'm going to look that up.
That I don't know.
But,
I have not heard of where he landed.
He was with the Colts for a while. Let me see where he is now. He has not been in the NFL since 2018. But he was time in the NFL for 3 seasons. So, who am I thinking of? Who's the Wisconsin quarterback that was with the Colts for a while? Who was their backup quarterback? That was the guy that played before Russell Wilson, wasn't it? What was his name?
Jim Sorgi was the quarterback.
Scott Tolzien. No, it wasn't Scott Tolzien. I have to go look it up. But anyway. So you get the point that I'm making, though, Vince. Like his quarterback rating significantly higher than everybody else, and so that's why I look at it and I say this kid's a lot better. People think you're basically saying that the Wisconsin system is what it was because he isn't good enough to do something different. When the reality is the Wisconsin system is what it is. It doesn't change.
Right.
If anything, it kind of tampered him down a little bit, in my opinion. And so I think that ultimately at the end of the day is what it boils down to. But I will grant this. If it's like all things are equal, normally I would go with the more experienced player. But if all things are equal and Drew Pine or Tyler Buckner are on the same level with Jack Cohn and the only difference is experience, I'd probably go with the younger player for the exact reason Jacob talked about. My point is, though, I don't think it's going to be equal.
Yeah.
I think Jack Cohn's going to be certainly better. And that's not a knock on those other kids because everybody knows how high I am on them.
Laker Irish, have you seen any tape on 23 safety Aiden Schuler? I believe he's committing this month.
I have not. So I talked to somebody last night that said that Notre Dame wants him. He worked out at their camp, the same camp that Avery Johnson worked out at. And the kid from Illinois that got offered worked at. He's a 2023 safety from New Jersey. Apparently he looked really good at that camp, and he's a take for Notre Dame. And there's a lot of optimism that when he makes his decision on August 15th, it could be Notre Dame, but I haven't had a chance to dive into him a whole lot yet.
Tommy Guns, he goes, just a heads up, I'm going to ask tomorrow about what the benefits are to playing man on one side and field and zone to the other.
Sounds good.
There you go. So we're prepared for that, for our Football 101. John Klimek wanted everybody to know that the Notre Dame defensive backs had hot calls to switch their coverages. They were all Little Debbie names. Man-to-man was Sticky Buns.
I got to know what the rest of those were.
That's pretty good. That's pretty
really
good. We actually had Little Debbie calls on our offensive line one year when I was coaching about where they were going to go, who's going to pick up who. Yeah, Little Debbie calls. I don't know. That must be a thing.
What were some of the names?
Oh, it was just like it wasn't anything specific. It was like, if it's a Little Debbie, we're doing this.
Because only thing I remember from Little Debbie is oatmeal pies. I can't even think of another.
Zebra cakes. Zebra cakes. Oh, that was my favorite. I had those on my lunch every day as a
child. We were more of a Hostess family growing up.
Oh, interesting. We were Little Debbie for sure. But anyway, I thought that was pretty good. Brandon agrees with your redshirting philosophy 100%. We like
good man.
Agree with us.
Well, on the show, I do. On the message board, I kind of like a little bit of disagreement. It makes
like a little bit of headbutting.
I wouldn't say that. Just a good back. Like I think Brandon was one of those people. Well, maybe it wasn't Brandon, but we were having a do stars matter debate on the board, and my stance on that, Vince. I hate that expression, stars matter. I don't like it, but I made my points. The other two guys, it was two different guys, made their points, and we're both coming from a standpoint of using data. And after a while, I was like, "Hey, I enjoyed this. Like, I didn't change your mind, you didn't change mine, but this was a fun talk."
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's what I want to do more of.
Ronald says, Football 101, gotta love it. I enjoy finding out what I don't know that I thought I might, or different verbiage. Good to be live coaches. Hey, bros, are you ready for some football?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I'm very ready for football.
I was thinking about, high school football started today. I was thinking about like swinging by some schools and just to watch some football, just to get it back into my blood.
A weird, creepy guy that's just watching teenagers play football. Whatever you got to do, Vince. Whatever you got to do.
I'd go someplace where I knew the coaches at least, so it would be a little less creepy.
Smart
John Klimek, Swiss rolls. Okay. There we go. Which Swiss rolls.
I do remember
was
those.
my favorite.
Right.
He goes.
Isn't that Little Debbie's version of ho-hos, basically?
Yeah, it's like yep, exactly. It says it meant he didn't have outside contain and could make an inside move.
Okay.
I like how they're taking the names and like actually
practical.
Yeah,
that's smart.
That takes some thought, man.
Yeah.
Felix Fournier says, with the departure at wide receiver via transfer, I sure hope they don't redshirt Colsey and Styles.
Barring injury, there's no reason to redshirt those two guys.
Agreed.
If they're as good as we think, neither one of those guys are 5-year players. I just hope they have them for 4. I mean, no reason to redshirt those guys.
Right.
I mean, Miles Boykin had one good year at Notre Dame. One. He had like 18 career catches his first 3 years. Redshirted as a freshman. One good year. Didn't even have 1,000 yards. Goes pro. You just don't see fifth-year players a ton at the skill position. You will occasionally, but usually it's because the guy had an injury.
Right.
And that's when I would use a redshirt. Is save that for when a guy has an injury. I just don't see a high upside guy. I just don't see it. Yeah.
Felix Fournier says, I think we were talking about Chris Tyree and people need to see more from him or whatever. He says, I think people expected more spins and jukes and stuff out of Tyree, but he was really productive nonetheless.
That's just not his game.
Right.
I mean, it's just, and there's somebody else, I don't even want to pull it up. Somebody's like, oh, he went down every time he got touched. I don't know what you're watching.
Disagree with that.
I mean, completely. I don't know what you're watching.
He ran tough. Wow. Yeah. I'm sure I'm going to butcher this last name based on McArdle. Just roll it right off the tongue. Love it. Sean McArdle says
what the other guy said is if it's McArdle, I guess maybe, because the other guy said if it's a vowel after the MC, it's Mac is what the other guy said. So it might be McArdle.
Oh, and so it's not.
I don't
Nick.
know, but yeah,
okay.
Yeah, but if we're not pronouncing it correctly, you let us know.
I'm so
we
sorry.
Always, and we say that because we always want to get people's names correct.
I butcher names, and I'm terrible at it.
It's okay.
Try doing roll call for me at school. It doesn't go well.
You know what scene I just got in my head is the substitute teacher thing from Key and Peele.
That's me.
Where's Jake Quillen at?
Jake
Quillen. Hey, Ron, you want to go to War, Balaki?
I broke my clipboard in front of the kids one year just because of that. And like half the kids understood it.
Never call a kid Aaron ever again. It's A.A. Ron.
A.A. Ron.
Yeah. Timothy, present. Thank you.
Present.
Present. That's right. The second one wasn't very funny, but the first one was.
The first one was
to do a second one, and it wasn't very funny.
Yeah, it was okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sean says just signed
up.
Stop it, man! You're killing me.
Sorry, Sean.
We're going to have to play that for people. Anyway, he goes, just signed up for the message board, even though I'm more of a video YouTube platform guy. Will you be posting in-game stuff on the message board during the season? A strong yes on that.
So, we'll, so just to give people a heads up, right? So last year we did an in-game chat, right? And the advantage of the way we did it last year, it was part of a free content piece, so everybody could watch it. We're going to do it this year on the message board. And even though it's going to financially would make more sense for us to do it on a free thing because more people have access, because a lot fewer people have access to the boards. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, but these are the people that are supporting us the most. And so we will have, the in-game chats we had, which are going to be like, what we'll do is, and Vince and I will hammer this out more, but like we'll put, if we get or Twitter clips of highlights, we'll put those in there. We'll put our analysis will be in there, like our play-by-play analysis of Vince and I just kind of sharing our thoughts of it.
Yeah.
We'll have one that's open for people to comment. And then the one that we'll have is going to be more just he and I sharing our opinion of it. And it's not that we don't want people to have opinions, but the reason we'll do it in two separate ones is because it's just some people just want to see our stuff, and it's make it a little bit easier to digest. And so that we'll do our live updates in the chat as opposed to on Twitter or on a free thing. So that'll definitely be in there. And that'll be like me saying, hey, here's what happened on the 3rd and 2. Defender did this, he read this. So we really get into the technical stuff of it, which is what I think makes us stand out a little bit more.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. And Vince, I just got your tech. We'll cover that. If there's a question about yours, bring it up. We'll address it.
There is coming
up.
We
did talk about it last week a little bit too.
Okay. I just want to make sure. All right. Notre Dame 2164. Which area am I most confident in? Let it play out. It's great.
There's some things I don't need to let play out. I just think they're going to be pretty good.
Great. Just great. Corey D says teams need contributions from their number 3 running back. Who will be our number 3? I assume it will be Flemister, but I want to see Diggs and Estime get some snaps as well. I think Flemister is going to be the number 3, but that doesn't mean you won't see the other guys.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Very. I do think he's going to have to play well to hold on to that number 3, though.
Right. Which is great.
Vince is just saying he thinks he's going to play well enough to hold on to it.
Yeah. Brandon, here you go. Thoughts on Ewers enrolling early. That means he'll be at fall camp coming up. I'm not happy about it because he'll have 1 year in Ohio State's system under his belt by the time they play Notre Dame in 22, but so will Buckner.
I'm not high on that kid. That's just my opinion. I think he's overrated.
Right.
Is he good? Is he a really talented kid? Sure. Is he a kid that I necessarily think that I could win with? I don't. And there's a lot of things about him that make me feel that way. This didn't just come up because of the NIL thing. So essentially what he's doing is a week before fall camp starts in Texas, he just said to his teammates, bye, peace out.
Right.
And the reason behind, now he's saying it's different. No, so the family caught some blowback in Texas is what I'm told.
Sure they did.
And because when they came out, it's like it was NIL stuff. It was they don't allow NIL in Texas. He's gonna try to go to Ohio State early, but even if he doesn't go to Ohio State, he's not going to play in Texas because he can start getting NIL stuff because he wants the money. That's what it was. But then they got major blowback, I'm told. And so then it spun to, no. I'm just trying to go to Ohio State earlier because I want to compete. I want to do this. And so the thing has changed. But, I mean, I think we all know what the
if he goes early and he signs NIL, though, doesn't that pretty much tell you what it was all about in the first place,
right.
in my opinion?
Right.
Ridiculous.
But, JT Daniels left high school early and decided to do this. So it's not completely unprecedented, but JT Daniels did it because he was going to go start as a true freshman at USC.
Right.
It's a little different scenario.
Right.
Now, could Quinn Ewers start and get a year under his belt? Sure. But I'm not as high on that kid as a lot of other people are. I'm just not. And I think it'll benefit him if he's the starter, assuming he's able to actually beat out McCord and Stroud, which I don't think is a given. I think it could also expedite his departure a little faster.
That's a very good point. We got a super chat, Brian. You want to go ahead and grab that?
Yes, I already know who it's from. I see the OL.
The OL, baby.
Yep.
This is a great one, by the way. Old Grim says, I won't be able to do live chat during the game. I'll be too busy yelling at the television set.
I get that. And thank you for the super chat, Old Grim. But I do think the cool thing, however, is, and I think you'll want to try this out, is the chat that Vince and I will be doing is just going to be like football talk. And so what I have been told before is people see something and get upset about a play. And then they read my explanation of what happened and realize, oh, okay, I'm still mad that it happened, but I'm not blaming the quarterback now. Like there's been times say, hey, look, Ian Book will make a pass or whatever else. And I'm like, oh, what kind of horrible pass was that? Guy wasn't even close. I'm like, hey, look, that wasn't on Ian Book. That ball was thrown here and the receiver was supposed to do this and he didn't do this.
Right, exactly.
Yep. So I think there's some benefit to that in my opinion to being able to read those things.
Right. Tommy says one of the unforeseen consequences.
Can I say something real quick? Because Ronald has a comment. Says no offense, guys, but I don't want to hear breathing. I don't even want to hear breathing during the game.
I didn't even see that one.
So he just put it up.
Oh, okay.
And he said, my ex used to tell me to hold pillows instead of clapping so dang loud and always just had to know some stupid crap. So I divorced her. Mic drop moment. Wow. Just so we're clear, when we talk about the live chat, we're talking about a written live chat on the message board. We will not be doing a video live chat during the games.
No,
I'm still trying not to laugh at Ronald's comment, but
that's great. Let me just put it this way. It wasn't good for me to be home as much as I was last season.
Year. Yeah.
Because my wife would get annoyed with me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I get it.
My wife was pretty good. She actually knows to not be near me, but then I'd get annoyed with her because she'd be like, hey, can I get you something to drink? Well, I'm not busy right now, because right. But I was the impatient one. But yeah, it will be a written chat. It'll be on the message board. You can just read it. So I would encourage you, like after each series,
take a look
on a commercial break, look at it because we may have some explanation of kind of what we're seeing and explain, hey, here's why this didn't work, or here's what happened here, or whatever the case may be.
Doesn't mean we won't have a live video later
afterwards, but not during the game. No,
right, exactly. No. That wouldn't go well with the people sitting around us.
No, I would want to punch us in the face if I was.
Oh, yes. Absolutely, yeah. I still can't stand the guys that get on and they do like a report in the middle of the game. Like
the worst for me, the guys that don't have their text messages sound turned off, and they're having a text message, ding. Yeah, I just want to like grab
over and over
and bash them over the head with it and then throw it out the window. I don't because I don't want to go to jail. But that's what I want to do.
I get it. Okay, here we go. Corey D says, Brian, I believe you made a comment that Estime needs to be careful about just how big and muscular he gets. Are you still worried about this?
Well, I'm worried about it because of what he looks like now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's an issue. I'm just saying without having seen him do a single workout, right?
Right.
Again, I always get nervous about kids that put on a lot of strength, like a lot of muscle weight in the offseason in high school, because it's not under our program. And there have been plenty of kids that actually, when they've showed up under Matt Bayless, he's like, we're gonna drop 10 pounds from you because I want to put that weight on, not your high school coach, right? Because it's usually, with all due respect, a lot of those strength programs, and not all of them, there's some really good strength coaches out there in high school level too, but a lot of my experience in my time it's kind of old school. You look great going to the beach, but you're not necessarily the most flexible, agile guy.
Right.
And that's what I get a little bit nervous about. Now, again, it may not be an issue for him. He just may have hit a growth spurt and all that, but I just get a little bit nervous because I want a guy that's very loose, and flexible, especially even with your arms. You've got to be quick with your arms, and you get too big as a running back and you try tucking that ball in and you just got muscles everywhere, like pushing that ball out. So there's always types of issues there. So
Domer Grizz has a really good question here. He says, you mentioned teams will avoid Kyle Hamilton and go after Griffith. Is there a scenario where Houston Griffith gets an All-America honor, but Kyle Hamilton doesn't, simply because of opportunities to shine? Thanks.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen. I think if anything, because look, honestly, Domer, it's a great question. That's a really great question. A lot of times these All-American honors are kind of done off reputation. And if Notre Dame has a great defense, even if Houston has more picks or breakups, Kyle's still going to be the All-American because there's going to be the buzz about how Houston's making plays because teams are avoiding Kyle, that kind of thing. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was more productive stats-wise the year before than he was this year, and he was not an All-American the year before because he didn't have the reputation yet.
Right.
So, and Kyle was an All-American last year and didn't have a ton of production. Remember the guy that tried to tell us that, and I mean no disrespect, but tried to tell us that Kyle wasn't very good in coverage, and his evidence was he only had one interception.
Right.
Well, it's because teams aren't going at him, But it's a really – I would say no because I think there's still going to be a rotation there, and I still think the reputation-wise and the fact that Houston obviously has to prove a lot to us, but, the premise here was obviously that Houston does make those plays.
Sure.
I could see it. I don't think it will, but would I be shocked by it if Houston has a really good year because teams are avoiding – Kyle, let's say he goes out and pick. He'd have to have kind of like crazy, like 7-8 picks to really go from no one's talking about him to All-American status. But if something like that happens, then I could see that. But it would take that kind of huge stat year for something like that. Kind of like Julian Love, but a lot of times it comes the year after. Mm-hmm. Like Julian Love had way more production in 2017 than he did in 2018. But 2018 was the year he got the All-American honors because of the reputation he had built the year before. So,
because you got to remember, these guys voting for this stuff don't watch all the games. They watch some, but they don't watch enough.
Some of them do, I'm sure, but most of them don't.
But you get my point. Reputation is important. Well, excuse me. Let's see. Let it play out is a thing. Apparently, John says I use let it play out at work now. It's a thing.
We're gonna have to get shirts done. Yeah,
I think it's great. Brandon says, do you think the staff may consider moving Ovi back to Viper? Ovi is not part of the team anymore, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Texas would be pretty ticked about that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. It'd be nice, though. I mean, but again, as far as we know, the Viper depth chart is fine, as far as we know. Where are you at, Vince?
I am at 231.
Okay, so we're getting close. Here's an interesting question. Chris Walters says, would you think Notre Dame would have won a single game if Charlie Weiss hired Brian Van Gorder as his DC? He kind of did. Just had a different name. His name was John Tenuta. Not a whole lot of difference.
I do remember that.
You know, John Tenuta is a better coach than Brian Van Gorder, but it's kind of similar philosophy. But they would have won a ton of games in 05 and 06, no matter who the defensive coordinator was, as we saw when they won all those games with Rick Minter as the D coordinator. But yeah, that's whew. I mean, but you know what though? I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, Charlie's teams didn't exactly have problems scoring. I mean, that wasn't really the issue. The problem is they couldn't stop anyone from scoring. That kind of was more of an issue than scoring was. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, but I always thought that team could score. You know, I mean they averaged more in 2009. They averaged 30.1 points per game that year. That was Charlie's last year. Notre Dame didn't go over 30 points a game again until 2014. So, yeah.
I got the one right underneath it. I found where you were at. Revolver 6238 says, did Notre Dame recruit Jacob Eason?
They recruited him early, but backed off pretty quickly because his dad went to Notre Dame. His dad is Tony Eason, who played at Notre Dame. Not the Tony Eason that played for the Patriots, a different Tony Eason. But his dad went to Notre Dame. Notre Dame looked at him early. They had him camp, but wasn't a fit. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But he wasn't a fit. He was in the same class as Ian Book.
Right.
I don't like how they handled recruiting that class. I thought there was other quarterbacks they should have gone after, but that's not one that I thought the staff made a mistake on.
Jesse Ferguson. I somewhat liked Ian Book. He was very athletic and had some heart. He definitely had heart. Let me stop right there. Dude had a bit.
Those two things are very accurate.
Yes,
both of those things are very accurate.
Yes, no question. Easy kid. If you're on his team, he's an easy kid to get behind and follow.
And if you're not looking at the game the way that this is ultimately the biggest difference between me and Notre Dame fans is we just look at the game. And this is not a disrespectful thing because my job is to look at the game differently. If I was just a fan sitting at home, I might have a different opinion. But my job is to look at things analytically and critically. If all I ever saw was what I saw on TV and I was just a fan and my job wasn't to give an honest objective, I'd probably have a completely different opinion. I would disagree with me too, probably.
Right, absolutely.
But, as someone who looks at the game differently and it's my job to do so, that's why we had the difference of opinion. But I understand why Notre Dame fans loved Ian Book because there was never a game. Now, there were games I questioned his mental toughness, to be honest with you, when dealing with pressure, things like that. But physical toughness and heart. And I mean, I still remember the game against USC in 2018 when 2018. He'd already busted his ribs up against Northwestern. Remember that? Because then he had to miss the next game against Florida State. This was a couple games later. It's a 3rd and 10. Ian takes off running to his left. A safety meets him right at the first down marker. If Ian steps out of bounds, he does not get the first down. He runs over the safety at the sideline to get the first down.
Yeah.
This is a kid with busted up ribs.
Right.
Right?
I will never question his heart.
Never question that kid's heart. Ever. And anyone that does has an opinion that you should not value.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
When it comes to football.
Yeah. Right. I'll continue with Jesse Staven. He said,
there's the big butt here.
Yeah, right. You like him, don't you? You like anyway. But that was
just keep going. Move on.
It's a song.
Keep going. Keep going to Jesse's question.
But he got in the way of the offense too often. I think he made the wide receivers look worse than they were because he didn't scan the field.
If you go back and read some of the NFL draft analysis that people made about Chase Claypool and Cole Kmet going into the draft, this is absolutely a very well held opinion. And I'm not talking about like what draft Twitter thought, right? There's some good people on draft Twitter. I'm talking more about what people are quoting scouts as telling them. It was this kid would have been. That's why some teams were way higher on Chase Claypool and Cole Kmet than others, because the teams really looked at the film and said this kid's numbers would have been great if you had a quarterback that would be more willing to throw into football. And I think it was especially true of Cole Kmet, because Chase still got his, because Chase did so much on the outside. Cole had Vince. Would you say that I'm exaggerating if I said there was probably 6 or 7 just pure seam routes that Ian Book should have hit? I mean, at least should have hit Cole Kmet as the first read.
I think it's conservative.
Not just open. I'm talking wide. I'm not talking about he could have probably hit him on 15. I'm talking about wide open. Wide open. I'd say there's probably at least 6 or 7.
Yeah, I think, I think you're being conservative.
And they weren't like, okay, because sometimes the guy's open, but you understand it because, that was his 4th read. He never got there to see that guy being wide open, because the pre-snap look didn't tell him to go there. And, his first read, because this was something people criticize. Wait, he should have banged that backside post. Okay, why? The guy was wide open. Okay, but what about the pre-snap read should have told him to go read that? Well, I don't know. Okay, his first read is over here. What about that read should have told him that wasn't open? But the guy was open. But you're looking at it on a TV. He's looking at it as the quarterback who's looking here. That's my read. That guy went out to the flats. I'm banging the curl. I'm not ever looking to the backside post route. Now, sometimes it can be a mistake because the pre-snap read should have told you to look to the backside post route, but that's not always the case. So that's not what I'm not talking about those instances. I'm talking about where clearly his read was to that side where he would look at Cole Kmet and then just go somewhere else. At least 6 or 7 times in 2019.
Right. Yep. I got bumped. I am now at 243. So if it's anything between where you're at and 243, I will relinquish.
Okay. Jesse Ferguson has a question. You want to go ahead and read those, Vince? I'll pop them up. You read them?
Yeah. Recruiting question. Can ND recruit both Hero Canoe and Anthony Lucas, or is it more of an either-or situation?
Now it's both. So it's definitely both now because of Anthony. This is kind of what we're referring to either. When Darren Agu committed, it opened up another opportunity for Hero. When Darren Agu was in the class, they already had 4 defensive linemen. They were only going to take 5. The only way they would have taken 6 if it was like Lucas and Cyrus Moss, and they would have figured it out. But they can now take both. Right. And they're being recruited to play 2 different positions. Anthony Lucas is more of an end that could play inside. Hero is an inside guy.
Yes, right.
He's an inside guy.
I'll grab the super chat since I got booted. Brandon says, watch the interview with Wagner. I'm still skeptical about his ability to add weight based on his comments. Is ND okay with taking 4 O-linemen if they land Schrouth?
I don't know what Notre Dame's opinion is on that, but I am. If they landed Schrouth, it would be Zach Rice or bust. It'd be Zach Rice, flip somebody else that you really like, Jake Taylor, something like that, or bust. It's how it'd be for me. Look, there's a reason that Ohio State went out to Colorado to get George Fitzpatrick, who has a similar frame and similar concerns as Emil Wagner in size. Can he fill out? There's a reason they took Fitzpatrick over Wagner, and that's because they're more confident in Fitzpatrick's ability to look. I don't care how athletic you are. If you're 270, you can't play offensive line at the Power 5 level.
True.
You just can't.
Right.
And so I'm very nervous about, because then the other problem is if he can get up to 300, but is he then going to lose the athleticism that makes him such a good player if he gets up to 300? Right. That's the question you have to ask yourself. I mean, there are kids that, and Vince, I've done this at the Division III level. I had a kid we had in 2004 and 2005. We had a cornerback named Rob Rodriguez when I was at Christopher Newport. And Rob was a freak. He actually got a tryout with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's about 5'6", 155 pounds. Got a tryout with the NFL. That's how good he was. He could walk up behind a 6'4" offensive lineman and basically put his hands on the kid's shoulders and leap over him. He was one of the he could dunk a basketball at 5'6", 155 pounds. But he just was 5'6", 155 pounds. He couldn't have played at the Division I level, no matter how athletic he was. He wasn't big enough to. He would have got hurt. He couldn't have played at that level, which is why the NFL teams didn't hold on to him. But he was a phenomenal football player. There has to be a level to where you're just not big enough to make it here. And it's an offensive line. You're 270. You just can't play here. Well, then you say, okay, well, anyone can get up 300 pounds, but not everyone can play at 300 pounds because
there's a big difference.
You don't have the functional strength of a 300 pounder, and you at some point in time you're going to lose athleticism. You just there's a certain level that your body says this is the biggest we can be and still stay fast or still stay quick.
Right.
And, that's kind of the issue we talked about with Myron Tagovailoa. Part of the reason he's supposedly so much more athletic and explosive and finishing he had trouble finishing at the quarterback when he was playing 3 technique. And that was one of my early concerns, is like, he's going to finish at the quarterback now further away from the quarterback. They say, but you'll understand, like, since he's lost some weight, he's so much more explosive and his closing speed so much better. His agility, his change of direction is so much better now,
which is why I'm so high. Yeah.
And he went to my church for a while. And you meet him, you're like, that kid should not be 295 pounds. And now they were doing what they need to do to help him survive inside.
Sure. Yeah, right.
But this is a better move for him. And some guys are that way. And when I look at Emil Wagner, I think of a guy who has a frame that's more similar to Adi Ogundeji than a guy that has a frame similar to Liam Eichenberg or Robert Hainsey.
Mm-hmm.
It's problematic.
Yeah.
Back up to the questions.
Yep, back up top.
AJ says, little behind, just got to the Alexander part. What the heck are the young receivers supposed to do to earn his trust? Seems like they could do everything right and still not play because they are young, and that's the problem. We've talked about this in the past. I'm just looking at this practically speaking. When you put a freshman down on the scout team, okay, so he's got to earn his opportunity. Okay, here's how it works in Notre Dame. When you go get down on the scout, when you get put on the scout team, you no longer meet with Del Alexander on the regular basis.
You are now forgotten.
You don't go over game. Yeah. This is fact. This is true.
It's not your opinion. This is what's happening.
This is what I've been told by literally. I've had no one tell me otherwise.
Right.
You now meet with the scout team, which are GAs, usually defensive GAs. You aren't in all the game plan meetings. You don't watch and go over your film. You may watch film of practice, but you're watching guys that played. You don't watch your film. Where when I coached and I had guys on scout team, I'd have my meeting, and then I would try to find time to sit down with those guys, whether it be one-on-one or as a team, and we'd watch film of them doing scout team stuff just to coach them up. Hey, look, or I would say, hey, look, watch on scout team. Here's some things I need to work on. We're going to work on this in individual tomorrow, right? Because, but that's not happening. Right. There was one kid last year, a scholarship kid, who I was told literally during individual would hold bags during individual periods instead of getting reps. Well, how's that kid supposed to get better? How's he supposed to earn his opportunity at that point in time?
Right.
He can't. You're basically saying your year's over. You're not going to help us. So he's got to earn his chance. How does he earn his chance when he's not getting that opportunity? And when you're not, you can't. I said this to my players when I got in, and this is something I learned right away as a coach. I can't remember who I learned it from, but it was something I learned very early on. It was, you tell your players up front, I'm going to treat all of you fairly. I'm going to hold all of you to the same standard of accountability, but you're not all going to be treated the same, because some players I'm going to expect even more from. Some players I'm not going to expect as much from, whether it be age, lack of talent. I can't ask a kid to do the things I'm asking Will Fuller to do if he's a 4.6. That would make me a stupid coach and a bad coach. Why aren't you getting open on that post route? Because I don't run a 4.32. Okay, well, get on that, fix it. You're a bad coach at that point in time.
Yeah.
But you understand, a freshman is not going to. I'm not going to jump on a freshman for getting some things wrong that I'm going to jump on my senior captain for getting wrong. And I'm not going to expect my freshman to know all the things that my senior captain should know. And it's my job to do everything I can to get him as far along as possible, instead of just, okay, well, camp's over. You're going to go on a scout team. Let's get back at it in the spring. And that conversation has been had before. I've been told it has happened before where, hey, look, we'll work on this in the spring. This is your role right now. That's insane to me. And then they wonder why in 4 years you've had a combined total of 9 catches from your freshman class. And that was from 2 players, and I think even in some of those were actually from Michael Young in the bowl game in 2017, because like 3 receivers were injured. Remember that, Vince? Michael Young caught a touchdown pass in that game. Michael Young caught 4 passes as a freshman. 2 of them were in the bowl game against LSU. 1 was for a touchdown. That was because Chase Claypool was out. He was already out before the game. And then there was 1 other receiver was out, and then Equanimity St. Brown took himself out in the first half.
That's right.
So that's why Michael played in the second half. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have those catches. And then one of his other catches was against Miami of Ohio in mop-up duty. And then Kevin Austin had 5 catches as a freshman. I believe all but one of them, the one against Navy, I believe, but I think all the others were mop-up duty. And a couple against Wake Forest late in the fourth quarter, they were mop-up duty. Okay, so you're telling me all the freshmen in the last 4 years, none of them were good enough to play as a freshman. Come on. Not even as a rotation guy. Come on. I'm not buying it. Ladarius Martin, our resident Bama fan, asking about Quinn Ewers and losing Jaheim Singletary. Ladarius, we talked about those early in the show. And so I would just encourage you to go back and watch those. Obviously, it's a big loss. Jaheim Singletary is very good. And Quinn Ewers, I'm not a big fan of that kid. Let's see here. Brandon says, unfortunately, I feel like Ohio State won't have a problem replacing Singletary. Maybe they'll get Jacoby Matthews or Zion Branch. Either way, I love when OSU loses on a highly ranked recruits. I agree. The problem with that, though, Brandon, is neither one of those guys are corners. Jacoby Matthews and Zion Branch are both safeties, and they're not safeties that can play corner. They're safeties.
Yeah.
Jaheim Singletary is a 6'1 plus 175-pound corner, like pure corner. I'm sorry, the kid that they got from Ohio that Notre Dame. I mean, you guys heard me say this before when Notre Dame was looking at him. Jair Brown's a solid player, smart player. But he's not a top 100 recruit. He's not a bum, but he's not a top 100 recruit. He doesn't have the speed to be a top 100 recruit. So some of those guys, they're good players, but they're not Jaheim Singletary. They're just not. And they were already in a good place as Zion Branch, although USC's pushing hard for him. But again, he's a safety. Jacoby Matthews is a safety. They're not corners. And this is going to, in my opinion, going to hurt them at corner because Terrence Brooks, the kid from Texas, again, not anywhere close on the same level as Jaheim Singletary. So to me, it's certainly going to have. Brandon says, wait, did Ovi transfer? LOL. I probably meant Osita Wanda when asking if he may move to Viper. So Osita actually moved to Viper in the spring, about halfway through the spring. I'm told, however, that he's just not quite ready yet for anything more than maybe a pass rushing role. That's based on the spring. Now, again, a good summer and a good fall camp could change that. But again, just based on what we saw in the spring, it's just, it's not where we need to be. A little late to the show, but never too late. Chili, greetings, IB Nation. Welcome back to the show. Chili, appreciate you. All righty. A lot of comments on
Ewers.
On Ewers, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're down to where I'm at now.
Yeah, Brandon says Penn State now has the number one class in America with their 24 commits. Class is practically all filled up. This is why, again, I don't really care about recruiting rankings. Would anyone trade Penn State's class for Notre Dame's right now? I wouldn't, because to Brandon's point, Penn State's basically done. There are some areas where Penn State is recruited better than Notre Dame, but as a whole class, I wouldn't trade it. But again, Notre Dame's you got to think, what if they get CJ Williams? What if they get Tobias Merriweather? What if they get Billy Schrouth? It's going to look a whole lot different when it's all said and done. And Notre Dame has a lot more. Yeah. Then he says on 247, Ohio State dropped to 3. That's because they're losing guys. And their recruiting ranking is actually going to take another hit because they're going to lose Ewers. Ewers is reclassifying to 2021. So exactly. You can't count him anymore. But again, I don't care because he's still on the roster. Just puts him in a different class. But it is going to knock their ranking down. Which, again, as you know, I don't really care much. Mark 1 says, good interview with the D coach, Brian. You can call me Brain. I'll take that. That's a mistake that I don't mind you making, to be completely honest with you.
It's gone off the rails over here. We've got song lyrics going back and forth.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't know if you realize that because you and I are about the same spot.
No, I'm going to find some questions here.
I'm trying to.
Joseph Wan said, AJ Harris posted a countdown on his Instagram story. Is he committing soon? I don't know if he's going to commit soon. I have been told by 2 sources that there's a chance he could decide this summer. If he decides this summer, that will not be good for Notre Dame. They won't get him if he decides this summer. They're going to need him to stay on. So if he does decide this summer, it could just mean he's going to make a commitment, or he's going to narrow down his top list or something like that. But Notre Dame's in that one, but right now they're not in his top 2 or 3 right now. They've fallen back a little bit. He's kind of, I think the bigger regional names have kind of won his attention in my opinion.
He's down to a top 13 according to the guys talking here.
And Brandon says Notre Dame better turn up the heat on Harris instead of letting the other CFB elites nab him. They're not letting him. They're recruiting him very hard. look, it goes back to this, as I've said before. Notre Dame's never is going to struggle to land the elite corners until they can take someone and turn them into a high pick. That's just how it works, right? I mean, why does Notre Dame continue to get offensive linemen? It's because of it's not just because they won the Joe Moore Award. It's because of how many recruits have picked Notre Dame and said, yeah, I don't really care about all the first round picks. I care that they won the Joe Moore Award. No, I like the Joe Moore Award, but 2 of those dudes were top 10 NFL draft picks, right? I mean, that's why it's important to turn a Ryan Barnes or Cam Hart, one of these guys, into a high draft pick, because that's going to be the thing that's going to help them get to that point in time. So, again, if I honestly, and you guys know I would, if Notre Dame wasn't recruiting him hard enough, I'd tell you, I would. It's not an issue. I just think he's kind of become enamored with the DBU contenders, essentially,
right,
that are from the Southeast and then Ohio State. And I think that's where he's at. And I don't think, because what can Notre Dame do? I mean, hey, we had some cornerbacks go high in the late 80s and early 90s. Right. It doesn't matter to him. So eventually they're going to have to get those top guys.
Chad Williams on our Culver's debate. $20 is a lot. I'll pay for quality any day of the week.
Agree, but it's kind of a fast food place. You know what I mean? Like it's like that mental thing of like,
and $20 for a meal for 2 people every day of the week is way.
Well, I mean, I'm not eating there every day, but yes,
that's why he said any day of the week. So I'm just saying that's a lot of money to spend on
one day of any, one day a week maybe, right. But it's we already we blew our weekly fast food opportunity on Monday. We didn't last very long on the week. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. And then he follows it up with he goes, I'm going to Culver's tonight after a fierce round of mini golf with the family.
There you go. Yeah, do it after the mini golf because your hands get a little bit greasy.
They do get a little greasy. I do like their fries though. Their crinkle fries.
Yeah. You know what we do actually, Vince, is we bring them home and put them in the air fryer for like 3 minutes, and they get real crunchy. Love them that way.
Crisp them up a little bit.
Yeah.
Here we go. Big Daddy's going to bring us back. He says, one thing that was scaring me this year in recruiting was I thought we weren't getting enough offense. From what I heard, though, this year was a defensive recruiting year. Is this true or is it an excuse?
It's an excuse. Yeah. Look, if you're only going to sign 7 offensive players, right? Let's just hypothetically, then you sign the best darn 7 offensive players.
Absolutely.
You can get. And the reality is look, they've so far missed on their top receiver targets, who they thought. Now, again, I think this is going to be one of those instances. I'll get to this. Okay, so they missed out on their top two running back targets. Now, I believe Jadarian Price was kind of on the same level, Gavin Sawchuk. But there's no doubt that Notre Dame viewed Dallin Hayden and Nicholas Singleton as their top 2 running back targets. There's no doubt about it, and they lost. They put Jake Taylor on their offensive line, Billy Strouth, Carson Hinsman. So far, they've missed out on all their top offensive line targets of like the top guys, right? And they just did. Quarterback, they missed out on the top. Now they got a good, solid player, right, Steve Angeli, but they missed out on top players,
right?
At receiver, they missed out on guys they wanted. They wanted Nick Anderson, and they didn't get him. They wanted Tyler Morrison, didn't get him. There was guys they wanted that they lost on. It's gonna actually. This is one of those times where losing guys is gonna benefit you. Because you're going to get the top 2 guys on my board, C.J. Williams and Tobias Merriweather, if you can finish in August, right? You get the top 2 guys on my board. Now, for me, I feel much better about where they stand with those, as I've said all along. If they decide this summer, I feel really good about where Notre Dame is. Well, C.J. is going to decide this summer. He's deciding next Sunday. Tobias, I believe, is also going to decide this month. We'll see. And if he does, I feel good about it. Well, if you get those 2 guys, you got the number 1 and number 2 guys on your board.
Yeah,
I can live with that. The other part of this too is I'm frustrated with the offense because of some of those missed opportunities because they don't have just dogs on the recruiting trail. And I think the fact that they're going to finish with what they are says a lot about, number 1, how good they've been on the field the last few years, but also I think Tommy Rees has done a really good job with this class. The assistants at some of these positions got to step up or they got to find guys that are better. Simple as that. Because you can't ask your coordinator to do it. Because what's going to happen if your coordinator has to carry all the weight is exactly what we've seen this year. You're going to get some guys because you're Notre Dame, because you've had to put 2 playoff appearances, but you're still going to miss on more than you should, or guys that you should have got. And, you got a running backs coach who used a strategy with Dallin Hayden that ultimately doomed him to fail in that recruitment. That's on him. They weren't able to close on Nicholas Singleton. They just weren't, right? I mean, they just flat out getting beat for guys.
Yeah.
And I think Tommy Rees is doing a really good job, but now he needs some other guys to step up and do a better job. But even then, you're still getting a top 200 caliber running back. If you get Williams and Merriweather, in my opinion, you got 2 top 100 receivers, and I graded Merriweather out as a top 50 player nationally. He is so underrated. He is a stud. You got a really good 1-2 punch at tight end. And even though your offensive line class isn't great right now, it's still Joey Tenona, Ty Chan, and Ashton Craig are 3 good football players. And if that's your down year, that's a step up from where you've been in the past, where this would have been a great year. So, I mean, it's getting better. It just there still are too many excuses being made on that side of the ball. Yeah. And it has to be, because the reality is you just don't have good enough coaches at a couple positions that you need better coaches from a recruiting standpoint. And fortunately, you had an offensive coordinator under Chip Long who could overcome that. And Tommy Rees this year so far has proven he's capable of overcoming that, which is why we've talked about why I'm so excited about what the 2023 class could be if Notre Dame puts the kind of product on the field offensively that we think they can.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're getting guys like Tobias Merriweather and CJ Williams, if you're able to get them, the tight ends you're getting, the running backs you're getting with averaging 33 points a game.
Right.
What are you going to do if you go out there and score 40?
The offense will do a lot of the talking for you on the recruiting trail. I mean, not that those guys don't need to step up. I'm not saying that. But that's one heck of a sidearm to have in your holster. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So,
yep.
Jeff, even though this was answered by many of the people in the chat, what are the odds on Hamilton sticking around after this season? If he is healthy all year, I would say 0. What do you think, Brian?
I think the only way he's not – I think it'd have to be a bad injury. And even then, he may just, take the insurance like Jalen Smith did and go.
Sure.
But, I just – I don't see it. I don't see it.
We got a lot of chatter about conference movements and all of that fun stuff and money and, Oh, here we go. Mark says, have you heard anything about how Book is doing? And I assume that means in Saints camp.
Honestly, Mark, I haven't. I don't pay much attention to the NFL.
It's only been like a week or a couple of days, so I don't know that anything has really – they haven't even put pads on yet, to my knowledge. So I think it's a little early.
Yeah, I don't pay a lot of attention to that, to be honest with you.
There we go. Dylan Riggin says, speaking of Jack Cohn, has he developed any notable relationships with a specific receiver? Not that I personally have heard, and I think that's the best possible thing.
I'm somewhat disagree with that.
Okay.
Apparently him and Avery Davis and him and Michael Mayer connected a lot in the spring.
I'm okay with that.
And I think there needs to be sort of you need to kind of have that to a degree. What you can't have is a guy that only looks at that.
Right.
But you always have to have a guy, hey, look, they're bringing pressure. I trust this guy to win a one-on-one. I'm looking there. Because there's times in a game where I don't have time to read the defense. I have this matchup. That's my guy. I like him in that matchup. And I'm going to have time to hit the top of my drop and let it go. And that's part of football. And him and Avery Davis connected a lot, and him and Michael Mayer connected a lot. But, Michael Mayer is the ultimate security blanket. And we're going to see those two, I think, connect a lot. But if he doesn't have a good enough relationship with those other guys, it's not going to work as much.
Michael Morris says, looking for your opinion here. He says, why do you think Brian Kelly is letting his coaches give interviews? Been gone for a bit. Happy to be back.
Yes, we're glad to have you back. I honestly, I don't know if there's a specific reason why, because I haven't been told one. I believe it's smart because it allows his assistants to get more exposure, which is going to help them on the recruiting trail. Vince, we talked about that last week. I think the other thing is I do think that Brian Kelly is getting to the point in his career where, you're closer to the end than you are the beginning. And you want to make sure that your program is healthy. And if you have people that you can trust to be the face of your program and you don't always have to be that guy, it helps them, but it also helps you.
Yeah.
And but I think if I had to guess, I'd say the recruiting piece is probably a bigger part of it, but I also think it's just Brian Kelly. Yeah, I think Brian Kelly, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've always felt that Brian Kelly doesn't do enough things to think about the fans. And it's like he looked at the media as almost like an adversarial thing, not realizing that we're kind of the conduit to the fans.
Exactly.
And I think that was part of it too. Is like it wasn't him letting Reese and Marcus Freeman, I don't believe, was about, hey, I'm gonna throw Driscoll a bone. It was just more of a he gave him access to these other places, and I'm gonna give him access to that site too, because it's just another opportunity for these coaches, for these fans to get to know Marcus and Tommy more. And, I would like to think that Brian Kelly knows me well enough to know that, yes, I'm going to be critical of these things, but I've never tried to trap him in a press conference. I've never tried to pick a fight with him in a press conference. He knows when I'm there in official capacity, we're going to talk ball. And I think he knows that. And I hope he knows that. So hopefully that was it too, where he knows I'm not going to try to get them into some tight positions or ask questions. He knows that's not my style. So I hope that was part of it too. But I think this is just another example of Brian Kelly evolving as a coach and realizing like it's time to realize where this thing is headed and take advantage of those things. We have opportunities to get our message out there. Let's not miss those opportunities.
Sure.
I have two guys leading my offense and defense, one offense, one defense, who I believe are gonna be extensions of me out there in the public sphere. And it'd be foolish for me not to let them be out there. And I think he's doing that. And it's just one of many changes that I believe we're seeing of Brian Kelly that are all good and are part of why I'm so excited about just where this team is going, because I think some of the roadblocks that Notre Dame has put in front of themselves are being removed. And that's exciting. Very exciting.
Our guy Ladarius says, is Penn State and Notre Dame considered rivals or no?
Not anymore. I think the fan bases don't like each other, but they haven't played since what, 2007? It's the last time they played. They played in 06 and 07.
I mean, they had an iconic game, obviously the Snow Bowl.
Yeah.
But rivals is a strong word.
They would have been rivals if Penn State didn't join the Big Ten.
Right.
Because remember in the 80s and 90s, the 80s they were starting to play each other a lot more.
Yeah.
And then they joined the Big Ten in 91, and it was they haven't scheduled a. I mean, I think I'm going to have to look it up, but I don't think that they played from the late 80s. I don't think they played again until 2006 when Notre Dame just beat the ever-living snot out of Penn State. Remember that with Brady Quinn? And I still remember him hitting Paul Puzzlesny up the seam, or hitting John Carlson up the seam right over top of Paul Puzzlesny, who's like this all-American great player and all that. And
I remember that.
Smoked them, yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, Thank you for that.
But Notre Dame smacked them. Yeah, so they played in 92, which was the end of their sort of the end of so they played in so Notre Dame and Penn State played 4 times up to 1976. 1976. They played the 5th time they ever played was in 76, and then they played in 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92. So like they played every year for like a decade.
Right.
Then Penn State joined the Big Ten.
Right.
So when they joined the Big Ten, they finished out that contract,
right.
And then they didn't play again until 06 and 07.
Right.
So they would have been rivals had they not joined they were on the pace to becoming, because there were some good games. The game Vince was talking about, the last game they played of that stretch was the Snow Bowl.
Yeah.
In 1992.
92. Yep.
And so I mean, and they had some good wins. Penn State beat Notre Dame, beat Lou Holtz in 86 and 87. Notre Dame beat them in 88 and 89. Then Penn State won in 90 and 91. And then Notre Dame won Penn State won in 90 and 91. Yeah. And then Notre Dame won in 92.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, they had some good back and forth, but when they joined the Big Ten, it was done.
Yep.
So answer is no, but that's a reason why.
OC
it would
Irish
make sense for them to be rivals. I mean, geographically,
it absolutely would.
The history of independence and all that other stuff.
Which is why I would love to try to grab them to go into the ACC. But that's another conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
OC Irish fan feels my pain with not being able to pronounce names. He goes, Vince, many years ago, I had 4 kids in my PE class by the Vietnamese name of Nguyen. When I called roll, it was
Isn't that
Nguyen
pronounced
number.
Win?
I don't know. Yeah, sure. Win.
It's pronounced Win.
Say, there you go. He would say win, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. I have actually numbered my own children. So hey, 2, come here. Yeah, I've actually done that.
I can attest to that being a true fact.
Hey, Brian, I have a visitor upstairs. I need to go take care of that. I will be right back.
Where are you at, Vince?
I am at 322.
Okay, so we'll keep this rolling. Hopefully we can wrap it up here soon. Let's get to some more questions. We finish up here. I actually think we're done. So, I think that's it. I think that's the last. What, Vince say 322? Okay, so we're actually up here. Sorry, I missed some. Alrighty. Brandon says, I got a house where I could put a man cave in the basement solely for watching Notre Dame away games. Watching it on the upstairs TV is no longer allowed. Don't ask why. Now I have to know why, Brandon. I have to know why. John says, I did the basement last year. This year we installed a covered patio that I will be moving to. Now, I've heard those are really cool where you actually get a TV outside and watch it outside. I don't think my neighbors would like that too much. Chad Williams says, just finished my theater room. Have acoustic panels. Only thing that sucks is the barn door my wife wanted. Hey, I'll take some of the good with the bad, right? Ben Tarnowski says, with Sebo being an established physical presence, do you think the staff would use him as a replacement for Tremble in the blocking game? I don't think so, Ben. I like where your head's at with this one, right? Like I like where you're kind of thinking outside the box on that one. I don't think so. I don't think he has, like, he's physical as a runner, but he's not like a run over you type of physical runner. He's more of just I'll hit you, I'll be physical, I'll get after it, I'll run hard. I don't think he has the weight to throw around in that regards to do that kind of role. I think you'd see more of a Kevin Bauman, Kane Barong. If anything, if it's going to be a running back, I think it'd probably be like an Estime or a Logan Diggs who just have a little bit more weight to throw around. Certainly the toughness is there, but I would want to see a guy that just could throw a little bit more weight around. And Sebo's still in like the 190s, I believe. So I don't think he's going to fill that role. Brandon with the super chat. I meant Osita. Could he be moved back to D-line? He still is at the D-line. And Osita and Ovi, I get it. I can see that mistake. But I had to give you a hard time on it anyway. But yeah, I could see that being the case. Yeah, Tommy, gotta love paying for corrections. Hey, man, you gotta do what you gotta do. And then see here. And I had another question about Aiden Schuler. I have not watched him yet. I'll get to that tonight. S says, Coach, with Terry Joseph, he came in with a rep as a great recruiter. Why do you think he didn't live up to it at Notre Dame? He also seems to be falling short as a recruiter at Texas as long as they lost a long-time DB. It's work. I mean, I don't know if maybe his recruitment was overhyped before. I don't know, but he didn't work, and he didn't relate well to kids. A lot of kids. That was really a big issue. But I think also part of that too was he burned some bridges with kids in some really important parts of the country. And I mean, honestly, one of the things I kept hearing from players and parents and high school coaches was he just rubbed people the wrong way. And when you develop that reputation, just because people don't think you're treating them with respect, you're going to have a hard time recruiting them. You really are. Some more questions here. John Rich says, it seems like most college centers are converted from other interior line positions. Is there a reason for this? I would say that they're not just recruited from – I actually think a lot of centers are guys that are also at tackle. If you think about Notre Dame, the centers they've had in recent years, you go back to Nick Martin, he was a high school tackle. Sam Mustipher was a high school tackle. Jarrett Patterson was a high school tackle. The only guy that's really converted to center that was an interior guy was Zeke Correll, and he's now back to guard where he played in high school. I think a big part of it is a lot of times teams aren't going to put their best or biggest lineman at center. They're going to put that guy at tackle or guard where he can kind of move more and be used to do different things. I think really that's the reason for it, because high school coaches a lot of times are just playing guys where they can best suit their team, which is what they should do. I mean, they're paid to win football games, and that's really what it boils down to, is just you put your, it's like, you see a lot of teams put their best athlete at running back or quarterback, and he's not a quarterback at the next level, but that's the easiest way for us to get him the ball. And so, I mean, I get that. John Furno says, will the wide receiver situation be fixed at some point by the coach? I think the one troubling thing that still remains for me is I don't think Brian Kelly views the receiver situation as a problem. I think that's really the bigger issue for me. So, yeah. Tommy Kolowinski. See, this is why stuff. Not you, Tommy, because you're just. But this is where people just kind of run with things. It says, heard there was an issue with Jordan Botelho. Rumors that he failed a drug test were cleared up. He didn't get tested by the NCAA, but there's something going on. Jack Nolan wouldn't get into it. I just. I mean, I don't want to say let it play out, but I mean, let it play out. But as we said earlier in the show, we were told by Notre Dame he was not tested by the NCAA. Nobody on the team was tested by the NCAA. And that right now there is no one suspended. I asked, do you anticipate that changing? And they said, at this time, we do not. So that's all I can tell you. But as I said, beyond that, I have no comment because other than that, other than Notre Dame saying there's nothing going on here, I don't know what else to say about it. Irishman7114, love the channel and chats. Thank you both so much for all the hard work you do. Also, thanks to your families for being willing to share with us, and I will certainly pass that along without question. Michael Morris, I'm a new member to the Irish Breakdown message board, massage board. Okay, we're not doing that in our chats, but to our message board, very happy. I appreciate that, Michael, very much, and welcome aboard. I set a goal. I won't tell you what that goal number is, but I set a goal for where I wanted to be. We launched the message board on July 9th. I can't believe it's already been around for almost a month, but we set the goal on July 9th. I set a goal for where I wanted to be by the end of the month. We went about almost 200% past that. I mean, it was way better than I thought it was going to be, which was really cool. Really cool. And thank all of y'all for that one very much. Got a Florida State fan. Hi, I'm from Baltimore, but I've been a Florida Gator fan for years. We have a Florida Gator back in the channel, LC Gaming channel. I think you were with us last week as well. Get some more questions. Keegan McLaughlin says, so with Coach Alexander's thoughts on playing time, I could enroll as a graduate student and start as a formal D3 tight end. Just kidding, but really. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but yeah, there's too much of an emphasis on veterans. That's an issue for me. Sometimes that's okay, but it's when there's a big difference in talent, you got to try to get the younger guys as part of what you're doing. So LC Gaming says my Florida Gators will beat Alabama for the Southeastern Championship. We'll see. I don't know if I'd go that far, but we'll see. I think right now I got to worry about beating Georgia in the regular season. That's going to be the battle. That's going to be an interesting thing. And now I am very curious to see how Georgia does or how Florida does. I think it's week 3 or week 4 when they play Bama. That's going to be a really interesting battle. Very interesting battle. Benjamin Perry, I wish Vince was around for this chat. If your brain, does that make Vince the pinky? Love the show. I appreciate that very much. I'm going to tell Vince that one. I'm going to tell him that one for sure. John Zabrinsky says, not sure about Book, but Trevor Lawrence looks Peyton Manning like so far. Zach Wilson looks up and down. That doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, he just signed, but that's not surprised me at all. Joseph Salvatore says, following up on the recruiting talk, is the Junkins recruitment going into the fall? Yeah, right now he plans on visiting on September, the 11th? The weekend that Notre Dame plays Toledo at home, so the first home game of the season. That's when Quinshon Junkins plans on visiting Notre Dame, at least as of last week. I'll follow up with him here soon, but that's what the plan was as of last week. He was going to visit Notre Dame in September. Now, where they are numbers-wise and all that, I don't know, but they are still after him. Michael Campbell asks, any word if Notre Dame is going after cornerback Jaheim Singletary after he just decommits from Ohio State? I mean, I would imagine they may reach out, but they've got 4 corners committed in the class already. I would have no problem if Notre Dame reached out. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But I don't think it would be really worth the time because he's not coming to Notre Dame. He's going to stay. He's going to stay in the southern part of the country. There's no question. There's no question for that. Hey, Vince, you missed a really good comment from one of our shows, from one of our subscribers. Oh, yeah.
So
I just want to make sure you see that.
If you're the brain, does that make Vince? Oh, Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain. That was a great. I used to watch that show as a kid. Well done, Benjamin Perry.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm trying to.
Pinky was an idiot though. Come on, Brian. What are you talking about? That's me apparently. I get. Come on,
when
Brian.
you talk like that, I certainly
that's how
understand.
That's how Pinky talks.
Yeah. Sid Irish bringing up a great memory. He remembers when Notre Dame beat the Dogs at out of Spurrier in the '92 Sugar Bowl. See, Notre Dame fans remember that game a little differently than I do. Really? Because I've watched it recently. Because Notre Dame fans they beat the mess. Like it was a close game until the fourth quarter.
Right.
Like they ran away with it in the fourth quarter, but it was a one-score game for most of the game. Notre Dame just kind of put it away late. Now they physically beat up Florida, but Florida was in that game almost the entire time.
Yeah.
But Sid is right. Notre Dame was a huge underdog in that game and spanked them. That was the Cheerios Bowl. Remember that?
Right? I should say I remember it I remember it kind of because that was 92, 93. Excuse me. And so, I was like 12, 13 in that neighborhood. So, but I do remember it. I remember the white jerseys with the green numbers. I thought those were pretty stinking cool. And watching Jerome do the chop in the end zone.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was great with the green numbers. Brandon some guys were talking about their man caves and different things like that. And Brandon talked about how he is not allowed to watch football games upstairs. And I was curious as to why. And he said, last year's 12-7 victory over Louisville was the last straw. May have been so upset during the game that a couple holes magically appeared in the walls. So wife booted him.
Oh, that would be bad for me. Tommy, would be bad.
Your guy Tommy Guns can relate, Vince. He goes, Vince, me and my wife do the same thing when we're out at stores and whatnot. Babe, you got an aisle number 3.
Yep. I'm always like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Like constant counting.
Yep.
Constant counting. Yep. I hear you, man.
So I believe that is gonna be it.
All right.
That is going to be it. So I appreciate everybody being part of the show today. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk Notre Dame, weeks 2 and 3 opponents, the Toledo Rockets and the Purdue Boilermakers. So
which means guaranteed big news.
Barring news breaking tomorrow, that is the topic we're going to discuss. So I've never, ever wanted to get a Purdue-Toledo conversation out of the way more than I do now. But before you leave, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the notification bell. So that way, anytime we put a show out, like say it's Sunday and we get some news and we want to do a show right away, you get immediately notified that we're going to have those shows. So put those notifications on and share. And, of course, as always, please support the channel. Boards at irishbreakdown.com. And also, there's a deal for you, right? So you guys help us out. We're hooking you up. You got to try Built Bar. We have a deal with them now where if you use the promo code Irish Breakdown, and you can find the link to that, or if you click it up, it just puts the promo in there. It's at the bottom of the display or at the top of the display area below. You click on it, you use promo code Irish Breakdown, you get 10% off your entire discount. I actually have some, Vince, waiting for me outside.
Ooh,
so when this show is over,
nice.
I'm going to be going to get mine, and I'm going to be unwrapping a cherry barcia and punishing it. And Angela's probably going to do the same thing to a double chocolate. So I got those for her. She hasn't tried those yet. She's very excited about it. I'm a creature of habit. I like something. I just have it all the time. So I'm not an experimental guy. So the cherry barcias and the coconut are the two I love. So I just kind of get those. And then I'll get others for my wife because she likes to experiment. And then I'll try the ones that I get for her.
There you go.
But she's not allowed to try mine. Those are it works out well because the cherry barcia has some nuts in it, and she's allergic to tree nuts. And so, sorry, honey, you can't have any of mine. It's for you. It's because I love you. I don't want you to have an allergic reaction.
Worked out well for you.
Yeah, so try those. 10% off your discount if you use the promo code Irish Breakdown. And if you try it, I really think you're going to like it. I really do. I made Vince try it. He said he liked it. His daughter definitely liked it. She was texting me from his phone.
Yes, she was.
That was number 4, right?
Yes.
Number 4 texted me like, hey, do you have any more of those Built Bars? I said, no, because I can't give away my wife's. I gave you one of my wife's. I can't give another way.
She was grilling you, man. Like,
yeah, she was.
You tried.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So this is an interesting conversation with number 4. So anyway, try those out. Try Built Bar. Come to irishbreakdown.com. Check out all the content we have. You can sign up for the message board at boards@irishbreakdown.com. We have monthly options. We have annual options. Do you want to join the booster club and just support us just because you want to support us, even if you're not necessarily a message board person, there's a way to do that as well. So just click on the link below, go to the join section, you'll have that. So until tomorrow, appreciate everybody being part of the show. For Vince, that's Vince. I'm Brian. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.